Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's review session of the City Planning Commission. We are joined today by Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners Benjamin, Cerullo, Crowell, Kermani, Marin, Osorio, and Ramprashad. Welcome to all of you. Before getting through today's agenda, I just want to take a moment to highlight some recent news from the Department of City Planning and from the administration. To start, I want to thank the New Yorkers who attended last month's Long Island City Neighborhood Plan workshop. We had a great conversation on how to best activate city-owned sites in the neighborhood, and alongside Council Member Julie Wan and the New York City Economic Development Corporation, we announced a request for expressions of interest to develop an existing Department of Education building at 4436 Vernon Boulevard. This site offers a great opportunity for us to deliver more active, community-serving uses for Long Island City. It was a busy week for the Economic Development Corporation, which joined Mayor Adams to announce a request for proposal for Gansevoort Square. This bold redevelopment would include up to 600 units of mixed-income housing with ground floor retail and new open space on a site alongside an expanded Whitney Museum and Highline. It's another step forward for the Manhattan Plan that we recently announced to create 100,000 homes across the borough over the next 10 years. Finally, one more RFP for the books. Mayor Adams and the Department of Housing Preservation and Development announced a request for proposals to construct a brand new state-of-the-art library with 100% affordable housing at the Grand Concourse Library in the Bronx. This development would build on the mayor's City of Yes for Families proposal, which aims to make New York City the best, most affordable place to raise a family. All three of these projects will help us tackle New York City's housing crisis and bring costs down for New Yorkers. Let's turn to today's agenda, shall we? We will begin with an important proposal to renovate and expand Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan. Many of the buildings in the hospital's campus date back 100 years or more, and Lenox Hill is asking for several land use measures to bring the hospital campus into the 21st century so it may continue to effectively serve this community. The proposal would enlarge and renovate the hospital to fit 475 single-bed patient rooms, state-of-the-art operating rooms, a dedicated mother-baby center, and an enhanced emergency department. The campus would include improved circulation for people and vehicles and a new entrance and elevator to the 6 train, making the southbound 77th Street subway station ADA accessible. Moving a few miles north, the Commission will next learn about a proposal from the Department of Housing Preservation and Development to construct Carmen Villegas Apartments, a 100% income-restricted affordable building at 100 East 111th Street in East Harlem. It would include 210 new homes, of which nearly 150 would be dedicated to low-income seniors through HPD's AIRS program, as well as community facility space. The project would be located near the 6 train at 110th Street, multiple community gardens, and another 100% income-restricted building at Sendero Verde, which includes the East Side's SOUL Family Enrichment Center. We'll next turn our eyes to 347 Flushing Avenue in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. This development would change its existing mix of offices, retail, and an ambulatory healthcare facility to focus more heavily on local office and retail with reduced ground floor parking. The building sits near Klassen Playground and Triangle, the Naval Cemetery landscape, and a B-57 bus stop. Also in Brooklyn, we'll hear about a proposed mixed-use building at 236 Gold Street in downtown Brooklyn. It looks to create nearly 115 homes, of which around 30 would be permanently income-restricted affordable, plus ground floor retail. Tenants would live just blocks away from Trinity Park, McLaughlin Park, Golconda Skate Park, as well as the F train at York Street. Over in downtown Jamaica, Queens, we'll review a proposal to allow a curb cut for 16325 Archer Avenue to access the parking garage of a planned as-of-right mixed-use development. This 100% income-restricted affordable building would sit across the street from York College and contain about 400 new homes. We'll also go over a couple city council modifications. The first relates to 2185 Coyle Street in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. This project would create over 430 homes, nearly 110 of them income-restricted, along with ground floor retail. The second, 438 Concord Avenue in Mott Haven, Bronx. This mixed-use project would create 90 homes, 25 of them permanently income-restricted affordable, as well as commercial and community facility spaces. I want to note we have also been joined by Commissioner Goodrich, as well as Commissioner Gold on Zoom. So it's a busy start to the month. Madam Secretary, I'm going to turn it to you, and let's get this party started here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Planning Commission Review Session for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. The time now is 1:08 p.m., and a quorum is present. The first item on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments, a special permit, and authorization in the Manhattan Community District 8. Our presenter is Aska Mohayuddin.
Hi, Aska.
Hello. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application by Lenox Hill Hospital to facilitate the revitalization and enlargement of the Lenox Hill Hospital campus in its existing Upper East Side location within the full city block at 100 East 77th Street in the Lenox Hill neighborhood of Manhattan Community District 8. The applicant is requesting a number of actions, including a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, a special permit, and an authorization. This slide provides an aerial view of the hospital with north at the top. The development site highlighted here in yellow covers a full city block and is bounded by Park Avenue to the west, East 77th Street to the north, Lexington Avenue to the east, and East 76th Street to the south. The surrounding area is primarily residential in character, ranging from between 3-story single-family townhomes to up to 30-story multifamily elevator buildings. The immediate area also reflects institutional uses such as hospitals and school uses. This St. John Baptiste Church, a Lamar building, sits immediately to the southeast of the hospital at the intersection of Lexington and 76th Street. Central Park is located 2 blocks west of the development site, seen on the upper left corner of this image. The area is served by Lexington Avenue subway line, which has a station for the 6th train adjacent to the development site at the intersection of Lexington Avenue and East 77th Street. Bus services along Lexington Avenue, East 79th Street, and East 72nd Street are all accessible to the site. City Bike has a bike sharing station at the corner of Park Avenue and East 76th Street. This slide shows the area map with the north at the top. The area is zoned with high-density districts along the avenues and major cross-town thoroughfares. Park Avenue is mapped with an R10 district within the Special Park Improvement District, which permits up to 10 FAR for community facility uses and up to 12 FAR for residential uses with affordable housing. The Special Park Improvement District was created to preserve the residential and architectural character of parts of 5th and Park Avenues. It limits the height of new buildings to 215 feet or 19 stories, whichever is less, and mandates street wall continuity and does not allow floor area bonuses. East of the intersection with Park Avenue, the East 79th Street frontage is mapped with an R10A district, which permits a maximum of up to 12 FAR for residential use with affordable housing. Lexington Avenue is mapped with a C18X district, which is an R9X equivalent, permitting up to 10.8 FAR for residential use with affordable housing, 9 FAR for community facility uses, and 2 FAR for commercial uses. The portion of 3rd Avenue within the surrounding area is mapped within an C19 district, an R10 equivalent, which permits up to 12 FAR for residential use with affordable housing and 10 FAR for community facility use. Mid-blocks are mapped with R8B districts, which permit up to 5.1 FAR for community facility uses or up to 4.8 FAR for residential uses with affordable housing. The first image on the left shows Park Avenue looking southeast from East 77th Street with Lenox Hill Hospital to the left. The Park Avenue streetscape is characterized by large, predominantly masonry multifamily buildings, rising to a consistent street wall height of 120 to 150 feet, with height above the parapet ranging from 160 to 210 feet. The second image on the right shows the hospital from the intersection of Park Avenue and East 77th Street. The image on the left shows a view of East 76th Street from Park Avenue with Lenox Hill Hospital on the left. The image on the left shows a view of the hospital from the intersection of Park Avenue and East 76th Street. The image on the left shows a view of Lexington Avenue facing northeast with Lenox Hill Hospital on the left. The build character of Lexington Avenue is more varied, including older townhomes and taller, more contemporary apartment buildings. The image on the left shows a view of the hospital from the intersection of Lexington Avenue and East 76th Street. The image on the left shows a view of East 77th Street from Lexington Avenue with Lenox Hill Hospital on the left. And the image on the left shows a view of the hospital from the intersection of Lexington Avenue and East 77th Street. These two images show a mid-block view of the hospital campus from the adjacent narrow streets. The one on the left is from East 77th Street, and the one on the right is from East 76th Street. The development site is a 82,700 square foot zoning lot, which encompasses the full city block. It is improved with 10 buildings used for nonprofit hospital use, which together comprise the Lenox Hill Hospital complex. The existing buildings range in height from 1 to 14 stories and were constructed between the late 1800s and early 1970s. 3 of the existing buildings were constructed pursuant to approvals by the Board of Standards and Appeals. Together, the existing hospital contains approximately 620,500 square feet of zoning floor area, or roughly about 7.5 FAR, which is greater than the amount of floor area permitted as of right under the current zoning designations. The existing buildings represent a variety of architectural styles and multiple eras of hospital design, and as a result, while the existing buildings have been interconnected to function as a single hospital, there are inconsistencies in elevation, and many of the buildings have long, narrow floor plates. Due to these constraints, operating suites are undersized, emergency services are limited, and most patient beds are provided in multi-bedded rooms. Despite significant investments since 2010, Lenox Hill Hospital does not meet current best practices for hospital design, and there are serious inefficiencies that impact the delivery of patient care. These challenges are not limited to only internal constraints, but spill over to the side streets as well. The existing public entrance to the hospital's emergency department, including the entrance for patients arriving by ambulance, is on East 77th Street. Since the hospital does not include off-street ambulance bays, East 77th Street is used for ambulance parking and unloading, with patients being transported across the public sidewalk. The hospital's existing loading facility on East 76th Street is limited to 3 bays and is undersized for the trucks necessary to serve the needs of a contemporary hospital. This results in periodic conflicts with pedestrian movement along the sidewalk, as well as vehicular traffic on both streets. To address these challenges, the applicant is proposing an enlargement and modernization of the existing Lenox Hill Hospital complex to ensure continued delivery of patient care in the hospital's Upper East Side location. Following the renovation, Lenox Hill Hospital will provide 475 single-bedded patient rooms, state-of-the-art operating rooms, a new emergency department, and a dedicated mother-baby wing. The applicant proposes to alleviate existing streetscape impacts caused by on-street ambulance parking and inadequate loading berths by providing new on-site ambulance space and appropriately sized loading berths. The proposed development would include improvements to accessibility at the 77th Street station, which include at-grade sidewalk expansion and additional covered open area at the intersection of Lexington Avenue and East 77th Street. To accomplish this, the proposed development includes 2 components. On the eastern portion of the block, including the mid-block on East 76th Street, the existing buildings would be demolished to allow for construction of the new hospital building with efficient floor plates, an expanded emergency department, and industry-standard surgical suites and patient rooms. On the western portion of the block, the existing buildings would be renovated to seamlessly connect with the new building and meet modern hospital standards, including single-bedded patient rooms. By retaining these buildings, exterior construction within the western portion of the block would be minimized, and the hospital would be able to provide uninterrupted care throughout the duration of construction. The total floor area within the proposed development, comprising the new hospital building and renovated existing buildings, would be over 1,034,000 square feet, or 12.5 FAR. The proposed use is non-profit hospital with up to 2,500 square feet of ground floor retail for a pharmacy. Of this amount, approximately 600,600 square feet would be provided within the new hospital building, and the remaining approximately 434,000 square feet would be in the renovated buildings to remain. The proposal would increase the current floor area on the site by roughly 5 FAR, or approximately 414,000 square feet. Let's now take a look at the ground floor plan to better understand how the proposed development sits within the block. On Park Avenue, a new entrance to the hospital's mother-baby wing would be provided, along with the introduction of transparency on this frontage. In addition to the mother-baby wing, the renovated buildings on the western portion would contain hospital support spaces, upgraded patient rooms, and a new fire stair. On East 77th Street, the new hospital building would include a dedicated staff entrance west of the subway station, and further west, an approximately 148-foot wide bay that would provide a covered off-street area for up to 6 ambulances. The ambulance bay would be accessible via 3 30-foot wide curb cuts on this street. The proposed ambulance bay would address the current concern of ambulances parking on the street. The ambulances would be able to fully pull into the bay to ensure patient loading and unloading occurred within the weather-protected hospital building. On East 76th Street, the existing loading berths on the existing buildings is proposed to remain. In addition, a new loading area will be provided within the new hospital building with 4 berth sides to accommodate trucks fully within the hospital. This would address the current condition of larger delivery trucks impeding pedestrian and vehicular circulation on the street. The main hospital entrance and lobby would be at the southeast corner of the site, fronting on Lexington Avenue. A dedicated patient discharge area will be located north of the lobby and include a small retail area for a pharmacy. A new entrance to an expanded emergency department would also be located on the northern portion of Lexington Avenue. Adjacent to the emergency department entrance, the applicant is proposing transit improvements to the existing subway entrance to the southbound platform of 77th Street Station. These improvements are a result of extensive consultation with the MTA. As seen in this photograph, the existing subway entrance includes 2 5-foot wide stairs located within the sidewalk on 77th Street, adjacent to the hospital. The applicant is proposing to replace these stairs with a single 15-foot wide stair on hospital property and add an ADA accessible elevator between the street level and mezzanine level. The southbound entrance will be made fully accessible with a ramp providing access between the mezzanine level and the platform. This is an illustrative rendering of the proposed subway entrance. The new stair will be protected from the elements by overhanging portions of the new hospital building and include improved lighting and security systems. This is an illustrated rendering of the ground floor along Lexington Avenue, showing the public entrance and lobby, the emergency department entrance, and the subway entrance. Above the ground floor, the new hospital building would include a podium portion rising to a height of approximately 195 feet at the street lines of Lexington Avenue, which would include the expanded emergency department, 30 industry standard operating rooms, single-bedded patient rooms, and support spaces. Above the podium, 2 building envelopes are proposed in this application, which are identified as Envelope 1 and Envelope 2. The purpose of the 2 envelopes is to incorporate maximum flexibility for building design while providing 2 options for public review that could fit the required hospital program. Under Envelope 1, the base of the new building along Lexington Avenue could rise to a height of 195 feet before setting back 10 feet and rising to a maximum height of 436 feet, inclusive of screened mechanical bulkheads. This portion of the new hospital building would contain 8 floors of patient rooms and several mechanical floors, while allowing for an efficient configuration of patient rooms with natural light provided along all sides of the building. Under envelope 1, the portion of the new hospital building at the mid-block could rise to a height of up to 210 feet, consistent with the highest floors currently existing in the mid-block portion of the development site. Under envelope 2, the height of the new hospital building would be lower than envelope 1 by 41 feet along the Lexington Avenue frontage. To accommodate the hospital's programmatic needs with a reduced overall height, envelope 2 moves some of that floor area to the mid-block instead. The envelope height along Lexington Avenue would be up to 395 feet, inclusive of mechanical bulkheads. To the west, an approximately 84-foot wide portion of the new building could rise to a height of up to 360 feet. Under envelope 2, there would be 6 floors of patient rooms above the podium, in addition to mechanical floors. The portion of the building would allow for an efficient configuration of patient rooms with natural light along all sides of the building. This is an illustrated rendering of Lexington Avenue to highlight the difference in height along the avenue between the two envelopes. And this is an illustrated rendering of East 76th Street to highlight the difference in height in the portion of the mid-block between the two envelopes. This is a diagram of the neighborhood character along Lexington Avenue, with the two envelopes showing the new hospital building in dark gray. This is a diagram of neighborhood character along East 76th Street, with the two envelopes showing the new hospital building in dark gray and existing hospital buildings to remain in light gray. This is a diagram of the neighborhood character along Park Avenue, with the two envelopes showing the existing hospital buildings to remain along Park Avenue in light gray, and the new hospital building in dark gray in the background. This is a diagram of the neighborhood character along East 77th Street, with the two envelopes showing the new hospital building in dark gray and existing hospital buildings to remain in light gray. The applicant is requesting a number of actions to facilitate this development. I will go into detail on each of these actions in the following slides. The first action is a zoning map amendment to rezone the mid-block from R8B to C18, which is a R9 equivalent, and the portion of the mid-block within 100 foot of Lexington Avenue from C18X to C19, which is an R10 equivalent. The rezoning would allow up to 10 FAR community facility use across the entire zoning lot. The second requested action is a zoning text amendment. The first amendment is to Article 7, Chapter 4, to create a new hospital special permit that would allow up to 20% increase in floor area for nonprofit hospitals within a full block located in an R10 or R9 equivalent commercial districts, partially within the Special Park Improvement District. The second amendment is to ZR Section 66513 to allow the new hospital special permit to be used in conjunction with a transit improvement bonus. The third amendment would be to ZR Section 9221 to allow the permitted FAR on a zoning lot partially within the Special Park Improvement District for which a hospital special permit is being granted to exceed 10 FAR, provided that the amount of floor area within the Special Park Improvement District does not exceed 10 FAR. And lastly, an amendment to ZR Appendix F would map MIH options 1 and 2 over the rezoning area. The applicant is requesting the newly proposed hospital special permit pursuant to ZR Section 74904 to allow a 20% floor area bonus to increase the allowed FAR on the site to 12 FAR. The special permit would also allow the project to incorporate any transit bonus separately requested through an authorization. It would establish the maximum zoning envelope and allow height and block modifications. The text amendment enabling the new special permit also includes conditions and findings that must be met. The conditions of the special permit require that 75% of the floor area on the zoning lot must be for hospital use, and 100% of the bonus floor area granted must be utilized for hospital use. Additionally, the floor area to be located within the portion of the lot within the Special Park Improvement District cannot exceed 10 FAR. To To grant the special permit, the Commission must find that the public benefit derived from such hospital development merits the additional floor area, and where bulk modifications are being requested, that such modifications result in a more satisfactory physical relationship to existing hospital buildings for an efficient integrated site plan and a satisfactory site plan and urban design relationships to adjacent streets and surrounding area. As part of the requested hospital special permit, the applicant is requesting bulk modifications within the two proposed zoning envelopes. There are two types of waivers being requested, ones that enable the new building along Lexington Avenue and ones that enable the existing buildings to remain. The requested waivers are to facilitate the new building on Lexington Avenue, and portions of the existing buildings on the mid-block include maximum front wall height, minimum required setback, and sky exposure plane. The requested waiver for front wall height would allow the podium height along Lexington Avenue and portions of the side streets to rise to 195 feet where 85 feet is required. The blue areas on the diagrams on this slide show the parts of the proposed buildings that exceed the maximum front wall height in the two proposed envelopes. The requested waiver for setback would allow setbacks between 9.4 feet to 10 feet along Lexington, where 15 feet is required, and portion of the side streets where 20 feet is required. The requested waiver for sky exposure plane would enable a maximum building height of 436 feet under envelope 1 and 395 feet under envelope 2. Again, the blue area on these diagrams show the parts of the building that exceed the height and setback regulations in the two proposed envelopes. On the western portion of the lot, the requested waivers would facilitate the existing buildings to remain and one fire stair tower addition. These also include previously granted BSA variances. This includes a waiver for the maximum front wall height to permit certain portions of the existing buildings previously approved by BSA variance to rise to a height of up to 175 feet and a stair tower addition to rise to 165 feet along Park Avenue. A waiver for minimum required front wall height and location would permit the street walls at the mid-block on Park Avenue, at the location of the new entrance to the Mother Baby portion of the hospital, and at the intersections of Park Avenue and East 76th Street and East 77th Street to continue to be less than the 125 feet required and offset from the street line. A waiver for maximum lot coverage would permit the envelopes to encompassing the existing buildings within the Special Park Improvement District. The applicant is also requesting two actions in connection with the requested transit bonus: a chairperson certification to dedicate an on-site transit easement volume, and a CPC authorization to facilitate the proposed station improvements. The proposed improvements on the 77th Street station would increase the capacity of the stairway entrance on the southwest corner of Lexington Avenue and East 77th Street by roughly 50%. It would provide full ADA access to a platform that does not currently provide ADA access, and improve pedestrian circulation by providing covered open area adjacent to the new stairway and street elevator. The applicant is seeking a floor area bonus of up to 0.5 FAR, or 41,400 square feet, in connection with the proposed improvements to the southbound platform of the 77th Street station. This application requires a racial equity report, which helps put the proposal into context with neighborhood level socioeconomic data. There is no housing proposed as part of this application. The Displacement Risk Index estimates comparative levels of residential displacement risk for New York City's neighborhoods. The index ranks neighborhoods from lowest to highest risk based on recent population characteristics, housing conditions, and market pressures. On this index, Lenox Hill Roosevelt Island falls in the lowest displacement risk index category. The population of the Upper East Side is 74% white non-Hispanic, 11% Asian, 8% Hispanic Latino, and 3% Black non-Hispanic. From 2010 to 2020, the area saw a 6% increase in population, with an increase in both the Asian and Hispanic populations, a decrease in the Black population, and a small decrease in the white population. Notice of completion of a draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, was issued on January 31st, 2025. The DEIS identified significant adverse impacts with respect to shadows and construction noise. Mitigation measures were identified in the DEIS and will be further explored in the FEIS. In summary, the applicant is seeking a number of actions to facilitate the expansion and renovation of Lenox Hill Hospital with an updated emergency department, single-bedded patient rooms, and industry-standard operating suites. The proposal would also alleviate existing streetscape impacts caused by on-street ambulance parking and inadequate loading berths serving the current hospital. The requested actions will allow for demolition of significant portions of the existing outdated buildings on the eastern portion of the development site, which will be replaced with a new hospital building fronting on Lexington Avenue, as well as the renovation and reconfiguration of the existing buildings on the western portion of the block to support ongoing hospital operations. The proposed development would also include improvements to accessibility at the 77th Street station. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Aska. Let me just start here with a few, obviously very significant proposal here, and a dynamic on the street that does not work very well today. Let's start with the ambulance bay and the truck loading. As proposed on 77th Street, ambulances would be able to fully enter within the footprint of the building and would no longer have to move patients across the sidewalk. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. They will have space for up to 6 ambulances to be fully within the building.
Okay. And so there's 6 spaces, 3 curb cuts,
yes.
Right? Okay. And that means that ambulances would be head in and then they would have to back out. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. While I have this image up, let's talk about the emergency department, and I'm gonna ask you also about the 76th Street loading too. So the emergency department, there's walk-in entrance as proposed here on Lexington.
Yes.
And then presumably also access through the ambulance bays through the emergency department support area, which I see here on the map.
Yeah, as well as the elevator, since the emergency department on the 2nd floor.
That's what I was going to ask you. Okay, so this is not the entire emergency department here,
because
that looked extremely small. So this is a 2nd floor emergency department, sort of the entry and I guess triage or welcoming area is on the ground floor. Is that it? Okay. All right, now on to 76th Street for the truck loading. Give us a sense of the relationship between the size of the trucks that generally stock a hospital building like this and the size of these loading bays, and what would that mean for the dynamic on 76th Street?
Yeah, so currently, as you can see on the existing loading that is to remain, it is mostly meant for really small trucks. However, transportation for a hospital of this size and the kind of materials that there are needed require pretty large trucks. And that is where the new loading berths come in, where it can fit up to 4 new trucks, 2 medium, well, not medium, they're still pretty large, and then 2 even larger trucks. And those will be fully within the building itself, so they won't be pulling out of the building, or as you can see in this image.
And what is the length of the longest truck loading bay?
I'm not sure about the length, but I can get you that information.
Okay. All right. And then the last question for me before I go to my colleagues here is, you presented 2 envelopes as sort of alternatives. Envelope 1, which puts a little more height on Lexington Avenue, and envelope 2, which puts a little more bulk in the middle of the block. What are we approving here for the interest of the commission? What is the proposal? This is a little different from what we would normally see. Can you explain it to us, what we're considering, why we're considering it this way, or any other insights you might offer here?
Yeah, of course. So typically what we have for other applications, sometimes when an applicant is looking for flexibility in the eventual building design, is that we create a zoning envelope that would be able to fit that building design eventually, and then the waivers are being requested for that envelope. Sometimes that envelope could be larger, where it would fit multiple building options within that. However, the applicant in this case chose to go with 2 separate envelopes so that it was clear to see that there were 2 different design options, and you would be approving and certifying both of these. If you were to approve, you would be certifying both of these envelope options. So eventually, it could be approved under both options. It could be approved under one option, or whatever. And then the applicant will choose, if both envelopes are approved, which of the 2 fits their program needs the best.
Does the applicant here have a preference between these 2 envelopes?
Not as they have indicated. They have said that both of these envelopes fit the programmatic needs of the hospital, which is why they have put these forward.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to Commissioner Cerullo to start.
Just a very quick follow-up to that. And I understand in terms of the role we're playing in this process and what the applicant's options would be based on the approval here. But take it one step forward just to understand procedurally the council's role in the next piece of this. So we're focused on these options. We have 1 or 2, or I'm assuming there's the potential to modify in whatever would be in scope. Then it goes to the council, and the council has an opinion on that. Does that also, is that open for modification so long as it's in scope?
Yes.
Also?
Yes. So
okay. So this is sort of a, yeah, got it.
Yeah. This sort of sets like the upper limits in both conditions. Yeah.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me go to Commissioner Gold on Zoom.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of other points of follow-up. The largest is would be interested in how the applicant's thinking about staging on this for the neighborhood. During the construction period. It might be an early question, but I've heard a lot of grumbling around that this has been positioned as a 12-year project, and that it was going to create a lot of both noise and displacement. So would be very interested in sort of how they're thinking about that from the perspective of, are there ways to A, accelerate, and B, are there, measures that can be taken to, minimize the disruption, if you will, to the neighborhood around them. So that's sort of my first question, if you've heard anything, and does that 12-year number sound right?
As far as I understand, I think the updated number is 9 years for construction under both envelopes. And in terms of, mitigation for construction, all of that is identified as an impact and is being explored at the DEIS and FEIS. So, I'll wait for the applicant to speak more on that.
Okay, got it. And then second, would also be interested in, during the construction period, presumably, presumably they have a plan for how to operate, right? I mean, if they're going to be taking down buildings, they have to move things from, one to another, which I assume is quite complicated. But again, to the extent that that may create some difficulty for, for the sorry, obviously, you want them to be able to continue to provide services, and I'm sure they've thought about that and how they do that most efficiently. But at the same time, would also be interested in any, thing that they're thinking there to both mitigate that potential disruption and also, basically, if you knock down a building, where do you go, right? So I suspect, again, we may be too early for that discussion, but it must be something that they're thinking of as they're thinking about the envelope.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yes. So the longer time period in the construction is because of that phasing of making sure that while construction is happening for the new building, they can and also renovations, that they can continue to provide care at this location. But I'll let the applicant speak more to the details of what that phasing program looks like.
Okay, and then the last question that I have is, it's interesting, I guess, to see. I don't fully understand it though. On the side that's on the Park Improvement District, presumably would be interested to understand a little bit better how this layers on it. Is that the reason that all of the height is going on the Lexington side, and rather than the Park side?
Yeah, so they're trying to keep the Park Avenue, which has a height limit, to where the existing buildings are there, like the height of the existing buildings there, and then pushing the height towards Lexington Avenue that does not have a height limit.
Got it. Okay. And then one more, if I can. So obviously it's interesting to see the improvement that they're making to the subway on the Lexington side and 77 side. Was curious, beyond that, if there were other, sort of proposed improvements to the neighborhood that have been suggested as they look at this plan.
I can definitely have the applicant speak to that if there are other improvements beyond the zoning lot itself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. I had a quick follow-up to Commissioner Grohl's question in terms of the significant potential mitigation measures that we're still waiting for in terms of the shadow impacts. I think the answer may be the same, that we'll wait to hear from them. But I was wondering if you can explain a little bit for the purposes of our analysis, given the fact that there's a difference in terms of the two envelopes, in terms of the shadow impacts that, they would create. I'm wondering if you can help us a little bit sort of like unfold, how should we start thinking about it in terms of the difference that this may take?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think that's part of the applicant's thinking here as well in proposing those two envelopes is whether that height makes sense all fully within Lexington Avenue, or whether it makes sense to add some of that height towards the mid-block. That's something because the community had also asked for a lower height on Lexington Avenue, and to be able to accommodate that, they're looking at that. So that's why I showed those illustrative renderings comparing the two. So the main difference between the two envelopes is really just the height on the mid-block, or a portion of the mid-block. And Stephanie.
Hi, Commissioner. Stephanie Shalou, Director of Environmental. Because the garden that's receiving the shadows impact, the 8th Church of Christ Scientist Garden, is located directly across the street. It's really pretty much any incremental building height that's added onto the envelope as exists today would result in shadows because it's so close. So there's not a lot of difference between the two envelopes for the shadows impact, just because of the lack of distance to the resource.
Thank you. That's very useful, and I look forward to reading more about this in the FAS. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin?
Thank you for the presentation. My question is about many hospitals are in financial hardship, shall we say. So I'm curious about how the hospital is funding these improvements to the 77th Street subway and why it's only on the south side platform.
I can let the applicant speak to the first part of your question. For the second part, that is the only part of the zoning lot that the applicant controls. So the entrance to the southbound is right adjacent to their development site and can be accessed through the development site. However, the northbound is across the street and it's on a different zoning lot and that they don't control.
Okay. If you would let them know that I'm interested in how that's going to happen, and I'm interested in the mechanism by which can the applicant not start on their redevelopment until they finish the transit improvements? Do they do them at the same time? How is that coordinated?
Yeah, I can have the applicant seek more detail on that, but just generally looking at the proposed development itself, the transit improvements are they're part of the proposed building itself. So it's fully within the development, within the new hospital building on Lexington Avenue. So the entrance would be under the portion of will be partially covered by the new building itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you would let them know that I'd like to know more about what is the guarantee that these things actually get done and that they get done timely.
Yeah, there's also an agreement that they have to sign, which is, as part of granting of a special permit that plays, with the MTA, and there's a restrictive declaration that kind of controls, a lot of these different aspects of
Right, and I'd be interested in what that restrictive declaration looks like. If we have it now, I'd love to have a copy of it, and I'd like to know whether it's just between the applicant and the MTA or the applicant and city planning. Is it our restrictive declaration?
Yeah, I can get more details and try to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Mann?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to go back to the ground floor plan, if we could, just to spend a little more time on the traffic and circulation questions the Chair was raising.
Sure.
Do you mind pulling that up?
Can we get the presentation up?
It's much more interesting to look at than me. Yeah, so if we can just maybe flip back to the ground floor. Great. Yeah, so just to understand kind of how the proposal impacts traffic circulation and kind of pedestrian circulation, given the ambulance bays and new loading dock, do you know if the applicant studied a below-grade solution that was in and out, meaning in one street, out the other, rather than a turnaround scheme for the loading and the ambulance bays?
Yeah, so we, in our discussion with the applicant as well, we're exploring different options for the ambulance itself and trying to see if there's a way to have the ambulances pull in and pull out of, whether it's from the same street or the other street. But there were constraints in terms of the existing structure and there's sort of structure columns and things that we can see in these like little boxes and the floor plan as well that were proving to be difficult to work with, while also accommodating all the needs that within this ground floor, including both the ambulance bays and the loading berth itself. But I can definitely have the applicants provide some more details about what those constraints might be.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's going to be a challenged street environment. Depending on when ambulances will come in, which would be somewhat unpredictable, I imagine. I imagine loading will be more predictable, but the crosstown traffic seems like it may be challenged, not to mention just the pedestrian circulation around the building perimeter. So it'd be great to understand that a bit better. In terms of the Lexington Avenue, Lexington seems like one of the more sort of pinched sidewalks in Midtown. And I'm curious, are they doing anything to alleviate that by setting the building back from the property line here? Yes.
So they're providing a non-bonus arcade along Lexington Avenue that sets the ground floor back to kind of add, it's only a 12-foot wide sidewalk on Lexington Avenue, and that would add some more for pedestrian circulation.
Okay, yeah, it's probably in the plans, but do you know what that dimension is? Just sort of, that's the dimension between the column line there and the red line?
Yes, yeah. I don't have the exact dimension, but I can get that to you.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a missed opportunity not to pull the whole building back and create a little more of a generous sidewalk along Lexington, but I can see why their site plan is constrained. Okay, and then just on the kind of urban design questions, which I seem like probably pretty central to this whole conversation of building height and scale and where the density goes and how much density is appropriate. Do you all have just a simple section across Lexington or kind of pointing to some reference points to help us think through, not just here in the East 70s, but along the East Side? And apologies, I was late, so I missed this. So I guess I'm just curious if the department is thinking about any particular reference points for thinking about the bulk along Lexington in terms of similar buildings.
Well, we have the neighborhood character that kind of outlines what have sections across from the side streets and as well as the avenues to help you kind of contextualize what the proposed development would look like within this area itself.
Yeah, so I guess maybe the simple question, which I can probably look up, is just how far south do you have to go to get to this level of bulk on Lexington Avenue? Meaning, what's the nearest reference point for a building that's got a street wall this height and a building at 400 feet?
I can get that information for you.
And I can probably look that up too. Okay, so that's the loading and traffic questions, and then just the urban design questions. I think I had one other. Oh yeah, on the hotel special permit. So is that I want to make sure I understand the applicability of that. That's a citywide special permit then?
It is sort of it's limited to, it's pretty limited in terms of where it would be applicable, because it has to be for lots that have both an R9 equivalent commercial district and an R10 equivalent commercial district within the special improvement, special park improvement district. So, it's really just to CB8, and then within CB8, the eligible sites are very limited, this being sort of the only one currently.
Yeah, so just on that point, I guess I'm a little puzzled here, meaning if we collectively believe hospitals are needed and valuable and we're worth giving density bonuses to, why are we only confining that to one very small geography? What's our thinking there? If we're going to, on the one hand, argue that the space is needed, but on the other hand, limited only to a very, very small subset of sites. I can understand the applicant's rationale for that. That makes the environmental review easier, but I'm not sure what the public policy rationale is of giving density bonuses only in very small geographies for something that's a pretty citywide resource.
Yeah, when we often have applications that come to us and we review them on a site-by-site basis, and there's always a potential for, additional eligible sites being added through further text amendments for such applications that come forward. As of right now, within the Upper East Side, this is the only site that is a full block and, could benefit from this. So removing those restrictions doesn't help any other hospital, just because there isn't a site that we know that would be seeking sort of that floor area bonus.
Yeah, no, I think I understand the construct. I guess what I'm just pointing out is that it would seem to suggest that this is the only place we'd want hospital development by creating a hospital bonus structure confined to this geography. And so I'm just trying to understand why, as a commission, we would say this is the geography we want to confine a hospital bonus to. I'm not sure I totally understand that part. So,
I think because it's in the Parks Improvement District.
No, hold on one sec. I think I understand your point. I mean, obviously, this is a private application here that is seeking to achieve something on this site. If this were a city-led sponsored proposal, we perhaps could have animated what you are suggesting, Commissioner. I think I don't think there's anything inconsistent about our desires to enable hospitals around the city, but since this is a private application, it was narrowed to this specific site in order to accomplish their goals, and also, of course, any other analogous sites in the area, which, of course, there are none today. Commissioner.
Yeah, I think that the reason it's limited in this way is because the Parks Improvement District does not allow for an exceedance of more than a 10 FAR. And that's simply for the Park Improvement District that's on Madison and on Fifth Avenue. You're right, there are other hospitals on Madison and Fifth, but the reason it's not citywide applicable is because other hospitals not in the Parks Improvement Districts have other ways to exceed and other special permits, but there's an absolute limit in the Park Improvement District to a 10 FAR.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rebershed.
Just one quick question, because some of the other questions I had were about funding and how the job will be phased. Out of curiosity, on slide 17 with the ambulance bay, I was just wondering why they decided to choose 3 30-foot curb cuts as opposed to one larger curb cut in this case. Do you know what the rationale was on their part?
Sure. That was something also the department had advocated for, just limiting the interruption of the sidewalk instead of, ambulances being able to come in and out in a, 120-foot bay without any kind of breaks in between. This limits what the ambulances can come in through to that 30-foot, and it provides a bit more protection for pedestrians who are utilizing that sidewalk on 77th Street.
And I believe it is there now. There's no standing on both sides of the street in terms of for the ambulances, because I was thinking about what Commissioner Mann was saying as well, backing in and out from that bay may be problematic. I don't know, but I was just curious. Do you know if there is no standing on the opposite side, so ambulances can go in and out?
I'm not sure, but I can confirm if there's a.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thanks, Ozga, very much. We'll look forward to picking this one up down the line. This item is now certified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Secretary.
The second item on our agenda is a certification of a disposition of city-owned property, an acquisition, and zoning map and zoning tax amendments in Manhattan Community District 11. Our presenter is Audrey Watts.
Hi, Audrey.
Cool, thank you. Today I'll be presenting on Carmen Villegas Apartments, an HPD application for income-restricted senior housing in East Harlem. This is an application by HPD and its partners for 4 actions: a zoning map amendment to change the existing R72, R72/C24, and R7B/C24 districts to R91 and R91/C24 districts, a zoning text amendment to modify Appendix F to designate an MIH area, an acquisition of the property by the city, and a disposition of non-residential city-owned property. And approval of these actions would facilitate the development of a 28-story income-restricted housing building with 210 units, including 147 ARES units, plus 1 superintendent's unit, and ground floor community facility space for seniors in East Harlem, Manhattan Community District 11. The surrounding area is characterized by a range of low to high-rise buildings consisting mostly of multifamily walk-ups and elevator buildings, as well as a number of NYCHA campuses. Institutional uses include income-restricted housing and housing for vulnerable populations, as well as charter and public schools. The surrounding area comprises a range of high-density R districts. There's one C8-4 district just south of the project area, while C4 overlays, which permit typical neighborhood retail uses, predominate on the avenues. The surrounding area includes the Special East Harlem Corridors District and Special Park Improvement District, and is covered by the Transit, Fresh, and Coastal zones. The rezoning area is currently zoned R72/C24, where residential FARs range from 3.44 to 5.01, and it's also zoned R7B/C24, where residential FARs range from 3 to 3.9. The surrounding area includes many high-rise NYCHA developments, and northwest of the project area is Sendero Verde, an income-restricted HPG housing development, which was completed in 2022. A major delineating feature of the surrounding area is the Park Avenue Viaduct, which supports the Metro North rail lines. And zooming into the proposed development site, today, privately owned Lot 1 is home to Casita Park, which is a 94-unit residence for seniors. The lot was previously city-owned, and in 2000, HPD received approvals that facilitated the construction of Casita Park, plus 12 required accessory off-street parking spaces. The rest of the rezoning area, moving clockwise, comprises 116 East 111th Street, which is Lot 66 and is now vacant, and 121 East 110th Street, which is Lot 8, which contains a mixed-use building. Zooming into street level, the proposed development site, pictured here in yellow, would replace the now underutilized Casita Park parking lot, which has 12 spaces, and a portion of the open area adjacent to the Casita Park building. To facilitate the development, the approximately 25,700 square foot Lot 1 would be reapportioned into 2 separate tax lots, one for the existing Casita Park building and another for the development site, which will span about 9,200 square feet. Here's a view of the development site of East 110th Street facing southeast from Park Avenue, with the development site at the left. A view of the development site facing east from the intersection of Park Avenue and East 110th Street, and a view of Park Avenue and the Park Avenue Viaduct facing northeast from East 110th Street, and with the development site, a corner of it, pictured in the rightmost area of the image. Here's another view of the sidewalk along the east side of Park, facing northeast from East 110th Street, that development site at right. View of the intersection of Park Avenue and East 110th Street, facing west. This immediately across the street from the development site. And a view of the sidewalk along the north side of East 110th Street, facing southeast from Park Avenue, the development site at the left. And circling around the block to East 111th Street, there are three views of Casita Park pictured here, and only the tower of the proposed development would be viewable from this vantage point. The proposed development would rise to a height of 291 feet and span 28 stories. Be comprised of 139,000 zoning square feet and include 63 income restricted units, MIH income restricted units, and 147 income restricted units developed under the AIRS program. The building itself, the FAR would be 5.42, and but the overall FAR for the for zoning lot 1, including Casita Park and the proposed development, would be 8.22. Finally, there is proposed to be 7,000 square feet of community facility space, and it's proposed to be rented to SAGE, which is an advocacy organization for LGBT seniors. 2 outdoor amenity spaces in the proposed development include a 6th floor terrace and ground floor open areas. The ground floor facing south on East 110th Street provides entrances for the residential and community facility uses, and adjacent to the building's residential lobby to the east, the proposed development includes open space consisting of an arcade, which would be named Salsa Way, that connects to an open interior courtyard. This space would be open to building residents of both the proposed development and of Casita Park. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant proposes 4 actions. The first is a zoning map amendment to change the project area from R72, R72/C24, and R7B/C24 zoning districts to R91 and R91/C24 zoning districts. The second action is a zoning text amendment to map a mandatory inclusionary housing area, with the applicant proposing to map MIH option 1. Finally, the applicant proposes an acquisition and disposition of the development site. Existing lot 1 will be reapportioned into 2 separate tax lots for Casita Park and the proposed development site, and the development site, block 1638, that part of lot 1, is proposed for acquisition by HPD. The development site will then be conveyed to HPD selected sponsor Ascendant Neighborhood Development Corporation, which also manages Casita Park, and Ascendant will develop the property as a new construction income restricted housing development. This application requires a racial equity report, which includes the following findings. As of 2021, half of the neighborhood households in East Harlem earn less than $36,000 a year, a median income that is significantly lower than Manhattan and citywide median incomes. In this proposed development, there will be a mix of studios and 1-bedrooms up to 60% AMI. However, the applicant has conveyed that these details aren't final and will speak more about the details during the ULURP process. And overall, as you can see on the map, the neighborhood is at a higher displacement risk. As of 2020, almost half of East Harlem residents identify as Latino and over a quarter identify as Black, which is in contrast to Manhattan as a whole, where almost half of residents identify as white. From 2010 to 2020, East Harlem's population increased at a slower rate than the city's population. The number of Asian and white identifying residents increased by almost 50% and almost a third, respectively, while the number of Black and Hispanic residents decreasing by 6% and 5%, respectively. Meanwhile, there's been a 13% Meanwhile, there's been a 13% jump in housing units constructed from 2010 to 2023, while population has increased by 4% in the area. This is a higher rate of housing production than the borough and the city as a whole, so the neighborhood's population is growing at a comparatively slower rate. In summary, the applicant proposes 4 actions: a zoning map amendment to rezone those R72, R72C24 and R7B/C24 districts to R91 and R91-/C24 districts, a zoning text amendment to modify Appendix F to designate an MIH area, an acquisition of property by the city, and subsequent disposition of that property. Approval of these actions would facilitate the development of a 28-story income-restricted housing building with 210 units, including 147 AIRS units, and ground floor community facility space for seniors in East Harlem, Community District 11. Thank you, and happy to take your questions.
Great, thank you very much. Let's start with Commissioner Benjamin.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, but sometime this year, we had another proposal for the West Village Apartments that proposed eliminating parking that had been required and having residential on that. Is there any special permit or any other approval that's necessary to remove the required parking?
Mm-hmm. So parking is not required for this development. And are you sorry if
for Casita, not for Carmen Villegas, for the original Casita development that had the 12 spaces? Were they required to have them, or were they?
Yes,
they were required to have them. Okay, so they have a C of O that says this parking is required. I understand that now under City of Yes, it may not be required, but is there any action that is required on our part or their part or the buildings department part to change their C of O to say that this parking isn't required before they sell the plot of land that we sold to them for the parking?
I see.
And we buy it back from them and then dispose of it.
Thank you for the clarification. I have not looked at the C of O recently, so I will certainly get back to you on that.
Hi, Commissioner. Jose Trucios, Upper Manhattan Team Leader. For senior housing, there is the applicability that you can waive the parking requirement, specifically for senior housing.
Right.
Before CHO even.
Are they waiving it now?
Yeah, but they don't need an action.
Is that part of the actions we're approving?
They don't need an action for that. It was only for senior housing before CHO, and now through an authorization, I believe you can do it as well.
So there's an authorization for that?
Right, but for other projects, if you're doing housing development in the area, but if you're developing senior housing, you're not required to provide any additional, mechanism to waive the parking requirement.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I can just jump in for a second. Commissioner Benjamin is asking really about the first development, not the second.
Correct.
She's asking about the one that's already there, the prior disposition from the city, and the initial parking requirement that existed. There was a parking requirement when that building was built, and they used the space next door that we're talking about here to satisfy that requirement. Is that right?
That's correct.
And at some point, that obligation ceases to exist through some process or no process. What Commissioner Benjamin is really asking is, what is the technical point that needs to be executed in order for that first building to no longer have its parking requirement? Did I do justice to that? Okay.
Yeah.
So can you help us on that?
Yeah. I will look into that and get back to you because I can't speak to those details and don't want to speak incorrectly.
Okay, and secondly, since we originally had UDAP and sold these two properties, to Casita. Are we buying it back from them? Are they giving it to us? Is there money involved, and what is the transaction?
So Lot 1 is now owned by the Casita Park Housing Development Fund, and so in order to affect the proposed development, they would have to divide the zoning lot into the two tax lots. As far as money exchange, I will look into what the transaction process and what that would be for this particular proposed acquisition and disposition.
And this was I believe that Casita, the original Casita, was the subject of a UDAP.
It was, yes.
And so the UDAP was for both lots, I take it.
So the UDAP was so Lot 1 is presently just a single lot, and then it would be divided into two tax lots to facilitate the proposed development. Casita Park, the Lot 1 was created from a consolidation of a number of lots. I can get that exact number and configuration for you, but that was, part of the UDAP application that was approved in 2000.
I guess my question is, do we need another disposition if we already have a disposition, a UDAP disposition resolution from the original?
Let me circle back on that, but it is my understanding that because in this situation they're proposing, just to divide the singular Lot 1, that the UDAP action was not needed, and they went with the acquisition and then disposition action.
Okay.
That since we're acquiring the site, we need to dispose it again, but not through a UDAP because it won't meet the requirements of the UDAP for the acquisition disposition through a UDAP process. So it is a straight acquisition and straight disposition through Article 11.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Marin?
Yes, so I'd be interested in finding out how this gets resolved as too, because having worked in development, you find that throughout the process, not all the documents are corrected. So there's regulatory documents here that dictate this was a UDAP. There is a C of O that says it has parking. I guess the concern that we're all trying to express is that those documents at Casita get corrected so that they don't have any issues in the future, because the UDAP, again, was for the entire Lot 1. We're now segregating out a portion of that UDAP lot and doing something different. And so the UDAP will read something different from what we're doing today. And again, the concern is that those ministerial documents get corrected when this building gets approved and built.
I see. Well, I will certainly follow up on that for you and get you the information.
It's a concern because throughout the city, when you see these developments and other not-for-profits are taking on developments, there's some entanglement of past documents that then prohibit an action or don't allow a building to be built or don't allow a property to be sold. And I've encountered quite a few, which is disrupting in the process.
Yeah. Hi, Commissioners. Nabila Malik, Deputy Director of the Manhattan Office. We understand these concerns and we'll certainly have HPD address them because we're not as privy to all of the contracts and agreements that they have. So
we understand that, but I will say that if we are the responsible parties that are approving something, then we want to make sure that the past action gets corrected and gets closed out correctly. Otherwise, we're not doing our job correctly.
Of course, agreed, and we'll make sure that HPD has the information needed.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. I have two questions, one on flooding and the other one on energy. On flooding, so even though it's clear, you've achieved a negative declaration or concluded a negative declaration, given the fact that this is not within the current 100-year floodplain, because this is within the coastal zone and a public acquisition, I'm wondering why there isn't a more detailed analysis, compliant with Policy 6 of the Waterfront Revitalization Program, which would require not only a full analysis, but also specific interventions to mitigate potential inundation. It also requires the analysis of projections by the New York Panel on Climate Change. I looked at it briefly, and it sounds like the property would be, in fact, within the 100-year floodplain as early as 2050, 2080. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you can help us understand a little bit, what's been the rationale there, and if perhaps this is something that you're working on, or anything that you can tell us about how the design is prepared for that.
Yeah. So the information I have from HPD is that the development would elevate critical mechanical systems and the lobby vestibule with some ramping above that sea level rise adjusted design flood elevation. And there would also be a subgrade stormwater retention tank. And as far as sustainability measures, the proposed development is proposed to be built to enterprise green community standards, and that would, in this case, would include incorporating sustainable features that are in line with passive house.
Yeah, no, thank you. I want to follow up on that, on energy in a minute, but I just wanted to suggest, or maybe ask, I mean, it's great to hear, and I didn't see that. I saw your energy efficiency sort of like bullets in the documents, but I didn't see any analysis, especially on the flooding side. And I would love to understand, what is the situation basically in terms of, just to make sure that we're fully compliant with the WRP here, again, elevating the fact that this is a requirement of the WRP. In terms of energy efficiency, thank you. I saw that, and this is great. We need to guarantee the highest energy standards when it comes to this type of investment. And the questions I had really was, in terms of renewables, it's great that in terms of energy efficiency, there is a commitment to achieving passive house. That's great. But there's also some mention on solar panels, but without really any detail in terms of, how much energy, where is it going to be stored, how is this, factor into the energy matrix of the building. And so I'm wondering if next time we see it, I don't know if you have anything you can share with us. If not, if next time we see this, we have a full, a detailed understanding of what we're talking about.
Well, thank you for those flags, and I can follow up with additional information and also flag this for HPD so they can share more details about the energy use and the flood resilience as well.
That'll be great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that when we hear from HPD, we'll bring it up as well. I'm appreciative of the additional data that HPD in general has been sharing with us. It would be great if we can understand, since in this area, in this part of the city, we've been recently approving a series of buildings that are proposing very high energy standards. I would like to understand what actually has been built. Have we been able to achieve those standards? And I think, building on a question that Commissioner Goodrich had asked the other day, what is the expectation in terms of, these energy efficiency standards actually resulting in lower rents?
Lower rents?
Yes. Are these savings factoring in reductions in the cost of housing, basically? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, thank you very much. This item is certified. Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 3.
The third item on our agenda is a certification of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Jordan Fraud.
Jordan?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Hey. All right, good afternoon, Chair Gorodnick and Commissioners. Today I'm going to present the 347 Flushing Avenue rezoning. This is a private application by Flushing Condo Holdings, LLC, for a zoning map amendment from M12 to M15 and R71C24, and a zoning text amendment to map an MIH area in order to facilitate the conversion of 313 parking spaces, about 82,000 square feet of community facility space, and about 58,000 square feet of commercial space into 84 parking spaces, about 26,000 square feet of community facility space, and about 137,500 square feet of commercial space. This conversion would take place within an existing 8-story building that was constructed in 2022. The proposed actions would also bring a legal but non-conforming 30-unit residential building at the corner of Kent Avenue and Flushing Avenue into compliance. This building was authorized in 2004 by BSA variance. The project area is located in the southwestern portion of Williamsburg in Brooklyn Community District 1, near the boundaries of Community Districts 2 and 3 and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The project area is bounded by Flushing Avenue, Kent Avenue, Classen Avenue, and Wallabout Street. Here's an aerial view of the project area looking northwest. The project area sits at the border of Williamsburg, Clinton Hill, Bedford-Stuyvesant, and Bedford-Stuyvesant, one block east of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, across which are the Brooklyn Navy Yard and Naval Cemetery landscape, a local open space. Williamsburg Bridge Plaza is about 4,000 feet north as the crow flies, and Pratt Institute is about 1/2 mile southwest. 8 blocks east of the project area is the Flushing Avenue station on the G train, and the B48, B57, and B62 bus are all accessible within a couple blocks. The Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, an interstate highway, is the only freight truck route in Brooklyn and ultimately connects New Jersey to the Bronx, passing through Staten Island, Brooklyn, and Queens. Flushing Avenue is also a truck route connecting downtown Brooklyn with Maspeth, Queens, and the Long Island Expressway. Here is a view from the bird's eye perspective of the project area. You can see the BQE immediately to the west and the Naval Cemetery landscape beyond that. Beyond that is the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Here is an axonometric view of the project area looking west. As you can see, the commercial and community facility 8-story building has already been constructed and acts as a buffer between the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway and Navy Yard to the west and various residential uses to the east. You can also see on the eastern side of the area outlined in the yellow dashed line, the project area, the existing 30-unit residential facility that was authorized by BSA variance in 2004. About 6 stories high. The project area consists of Block 2260, Lot 35 and 7501, bordered by Wallabout Street to the north, Flushing Avenue to the south, Classen Avenue to the west, and Kent Avenue to the east. The site is currently zoned M12, a manufacturing district which permits commercial, light industrial, and certain community facility uses, including retail, woodworking, repair shops, and wholesale servage and storage facilities. The maximum permitted FAR is 2.0 for industrial and commercial uses, and 4.8 for community facility uses. Required off-street parking varies by use, but typically 1 space per 300 square feet for commercial and 1 space per 1,000 square feet for industrial. Land uses in the surrounding area consist of a mix of light industrial, residential, mixed commercial and residential, and community facility uses. Much of the existing multifamily housing in the area is located within an M12 or other manufacturing zoning district, making it legal but non-conforming. In particular, immediately east of 347 Flushing on the same block is a 30-unit residential development authorized by BSA variance in 2004. The applicant is requesting to rezone this lot to R71 with a C24 overlay to bring it into conformance and map MIH to ensure affordability at any future residential developments on this site. I also want to draw the Commission's attention to 2 rezonings that occurred in the vicinity of the project area. The first is the 2001 Flushing Bedford rezoning, which remapped about 15 blocks east and southeast of the project area from manufacturing districts to R71 and M12 R71. This represented an early attempt by the city to convert abandoned or underutilized industrial parts of South Williamsburg into areas that could accommodate a wider range of uses, including residential. In particular, the MX4 zone in the lower right-hand corner of this map is an early model for how manufacturing and residential uses can coexist on the same block. Second, the Rose Castle rezoning in 2017 rezoned the block caddy corner from the project area from M12 to R7AC24 to facilitate an 8-story mixed-use building with approximately 168 dwelling units. Here are some photos of the site today. This is looking northeast from the corner of Flushing Avenue and Classen Avenue. The Brooklyn-Queens Expressway would be located just to the left of this photo. As you can see, the existing 8-story building has already been built and filled out its allotted height and bulk. Here's a photo of the front facade of the building on Flushing Avenue. Glass atrium entrance provides access to the shopping and retail portions of the building. Here's a photo of the existing residential building at 760 Kent Avenue, which was authorized by BSA variance in 2004 and would be brought into conformance by the proposed actions. Here are photos of the two buildings located adjacent to the project area across Flushing Avenue. On the left is the Rose Castle building mentioned previously, which was facilitated via a rezoning in 2017. On the right is a historic building used by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to house water tunnel and shaft maintenance staff. We now move to interior photos of the existing development. On the left, the entrance to the building from Flushing Avenue opens into an atrium providing access to several retail establishments on the first two floors. On the right, an office linked to the outpatient healthcare facility that currently occupies the majority of the building's floor area. Here are some photos of the ground floor and cellar parking facilities currently located in the building. Most of these spaces would be removed according to the proposed actions today. I would like to draw the Commission's attention now to some discrepancies in the interior of the building that were discovered during the application process and are being addressed by DCP, the applicant team, and the Department of Buildings. According to materials filed with the Department of Buildings in 2022, when this building first opened, the current building includes 2.0 FAR of commercial uses and 2.8 FAR of community facility uses, namely the outpatient healthcare facility. The healthcare facility and accessory warehouse space accessory to the healthcare facility, are listed on the ZD1 and Certificate of Occupancy as occupying the 4th through 7th and a portion of the 8th floor. However, as you can see from these interior photos provided by the applicant, the 6th and 7th floor contain what appear to be standard office space. This would result in the current building being non-conforming with more commercial floor area than the M12 district allows. During the application process, the applicant noted this discrepancy to DCP and also noted that the rezoning being requested today by mapping a district with up to 5.0 FAR commercial and 6.5 FAR community facility would bring the existing building into compliance. Our office alerted the Department of Buildings to the discrepancy, and our teams are working together with the applicant team to resolve the issue and move forward. Here we see a photo of the proposed project looking northeast from the corner of Classen Avenue and Flushing Avenue. The applicant is proposing the conversion of about 82,000 square feet of community facility space to 26,000 square feet, about 58,000 square feet of commercial space to 137,500 square feet, and 313 parking spaces to 84 within an existing 8-story building. The total FAR of the building would increase from 4.8 to 5.57, since most ground floor parking would be converted to commercial uses. According to the applicant team, the number of jobs on site would also increase from about 380 to 500 as a result of this conversion. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant seeks a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment to map an MIH area. The M15 zoning district would be mapped beginning at the northeast corner of Classen Avenue and Flushing Avenue to a depth of 100 feet, and along the northern frontage of Flushing Avenue to a line 90 feet west of Kent Avenue. The R71C24 district would be mapped from the northwest corner of Kent Avenue and Flushing Avenue to a depth of 100 feet, and then east along the remainder of the block. M15 districts permit a maximum FAR of 5.0 for commercial and manufacturing uses and 6.5 for limited community facility uses, with no required off-street parking. Height is governed by a sky exposure plane. R71 districts are medium-density residential districts permitting a maximum FAR of 3.44 or up to 5 with MIH on narrow streets. For buildings on a narrow street, the maximum base is 65 feet with a maximum building height of 75 feet, or in areas where MIH is mapped, a base height of 85 feet and a maximum of 105 feet. No parking would be required for buildings in the inner transit zone, which includes all of Brooklyn Community District 1. The applicant requests a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area coterminous with the existing residential facility within the project area, ensuring that any future residential development on this site contains an affordable component. This site is non-applicant owned and no residential development is being proposed at this time. This application requires a racial equity report because it is seeking a change to the use regulations in a manufacturing district where a building in the project area contains at least 100,000 square feet of floor area. The project area is located in Puma 4001, roughly coterminous with Brooklyn Community District 1. As you can see from this graph, Puma 4001 is disproportionately white compared to both Brooklyn and New York City as a whole. This particular project area in South Williamsburg is located in the Satmar Hasidic community. This graph shows income by race or ethnicity within Puma 4001. For all racial and ethnic groups, Puma 4001 contains more extremely low income and high income residents than the New York City average. The overall effect of the proposed project, according to the RER, would be an increase of 120 jobs compared to today. These jobs would be concentrated in the office, retail, and medical sectors. This graph shows that Puma 4001 currently has a greater percentage of office jobs and a lower percentage of institutional and industrial jobs than Brooklyn or New York City as a whole. The part of Williamsburg where the project area is located, Neighborhood Tabulation Area 72, is noteworthy for its high displacement risk, according to the Equitable Development Data Explorer. What largely drives this conclusion is the fact that 74% of residents in this neighborhood tabulation area have an income less than 200% of the federal poverty level. To conclude, this is a private application from Flushing Condo Holdings, LLC, for a zoning map amendment from M12 to M15 and R71C24, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH to facilitate the conversion of an existing 8-story building with commercial, community facility, and parking uses to a new floor plan with more commercial floor area and less community facility and parking space than currently exists on site. This would occur within the existing building envelope. In addition, the proposed actions would also bring a legal but non-conforming residential building into conformance. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you very much. I'll start with Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. So was this a situation where the development or the developers could not find a tenant or tenants to comply with the M1 zoning, so they had to essentially switch course?
No. I would not say that they couldn't find a tenant. The building is currently fully occupied according to M12 zoning. The switch from M12 to M15 does two things. It changes the ratio of community facility to commercial that's allowed, and it also reduces the parking. To my knowledge, there have not been issues actually finding tenants for the building, but they would like to rebalance the program on site to include more neighborhood serving commercial and retail and office and reduce the number of parking spaces.
But under M1, they needed a greater percentage of manufacturing than M1.
So it would be under M12.
Yeah.
They get up to 2 FAR of manufacturing or commercial.
Yeah.
And up to 4.8 community facility.
Right.
What they're asking for with M15, they would get up to 5 FAR of commercial or manufacturing and up to 6.5 FAR of community facility. So either way, they're increasing the amount of floor area they can use.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, thank you very much. I would say that I live just a few blocks from this facility, and they have never advertised for a manufacturing tenant. Even now, the signs that they have up for tenancy are for commercial tenants, but that's
right.
But I'm interested in the residential building that's going to be in the R7. Are they fully complying with an R7, including all of the balconies?
Let me see if so all of the studies that I did indicated that it would be fully compliant with R7-1. I don't know about your specific question about the balconies, but I can certainly look into it and get an answer for you. See if the balconies of the existing residential facility would present some sort of obstacle to full compliance.
Right, particularly the one that's on Kent.
Okay.
No, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Represhed?
Thank you for the presentation. Can you just repeat the number of the square footage amount that was supposed to be used for a community facility that was turned into office? And also, do you know if there's a lease agreement with those tenants that was being used for office now, that was supposed to be used instead of community facility?
Meaning, so I'll take your second question first.
So you had a floor plate that was supposed to be used for community facility that was actually being used for office.
Yes.
Correct?
That's correct.
So that tenant that's there, is there a long-term lease agreement with that tenant?
I do not know if there is a lease agreement for the offices that you're looking at right now, but I can find out.
All right, just curious. Thank you.
And then, well, sorry, what was your first question?
No, I was just curious how that was working in terms of how much was the square footage in terms of that was supposed to be used for a community facility? I forget the number you said earlier.
So in total, I've got the ZD1 here. The ZD1 says that on both the 6th and 7th floors, about 15,770 square feet each are used for community facility.
Question.
Yeah.
On the date of the ZD1, because usually when you get the approval for DOB, you put that in the very beginning of the job. Was that modified or amended later? Because the CO came a long time after that. So I was just curious. So is that the latest?
I believe this is the latest. This is the latest ZD1 as far as I know, yes.
Okay.
The date is May 2021.
2021. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Osorio?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for the presentation. And, you know, my first question is really just seconding Commissioner Rampershat's question. I wanted to ask you that. The second was, in terms of the non-conformance, I mean, can you help us understand sort of like what's the department's position in terms of, you know, perhaps maximizing the public benefit of kind of like addressing it right now? In other words, what has been the history here? How can we make sure that there's a strong commitment to actually fully comply to what is being proposed or what will be designated now? Specifically, I would like to understand, this is now moving into the second question or the third question, whether there's been ever manufacturing, how much of the mix has been manufacturing, and just to confirm what I think I understand, which is that there is no manufacturing proposed. And so why is that? It sounds to be that it could be part of the mix, especially when, you know, we are talking about addressing a non-compliance in the history of how this has been managed. So help me understand a little bit, you know, how is the department thinking about it?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say about this particular site is that it has not been used for manufacturing in some time, right? Even before this building went up in 2022, the site, as far back as I could go looking at aerial photos, where it's either a vacant lot or a bodega or a deli or some, you know, single-story commercial establishments. The other thing I'll note is that in this part of Williamsburg in particular, in the Satmar community, there is a pretty extensive pattern of land that is zoned manufacturing not being used for manufacturing purposes. There's a ton of legal non-conforming residential in the M zones that you see here. And then in particular, you also have the Navy Yard on the west side of the BQE, which is a huge manufacturing and industrial facility. So we don't see the creation of a commercial and community facility oriented buffer zone to sort of serve as a buffer between the BQE and the Navy Yard to the west and the more residential mixed use neighborhood to the east. We don't see that as like inherently a problem, given the way that the neighborhood has evolved up to this point.
So a couple of things. So thank you. That's useful. You know, for a time we've been talking about a neighborhood-wide study that can help us understand exactly what you're talking about, sort of like how many instances, but also just in general, you know, what are the needs, the potential land use rationale that could support something like that? And is that something that the department has made any progress on. I know that there were some procurement requirements with one particular aspect of that study, but I'm wondering if, I'm very interested in what you're saying and would love to understand what is the status of that research. Sorry, I know that, Alex, every time that this comes up, we land in the same place, but this is exactly why this would be so useful.
No, I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I don't have any updates on the timing of this. I feel pretty bad coming back, but as we know, we have a lot of applications in this area. But as soon as we have more information on the procurement process and when we can start the study fully, we'll definitely come back and talk with you through that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That would be just useful to, as we approach cases like this one. I think that in this particular case, to what you just said, I think the land use rationale makes sense. The only part that doesn't make sense is why doesn't it include at least some manufacturing, just to be sort of like to respond to the district that is being, proposed. Yeah. And so any additional information on this would be useful. And if you can, if not, if at any point you can encourage the applicant to consider that, I think that would be useful. I mean, it's not unprecedented to have an MX that could actually, and you're not proposing an MX, but to have a mixed industrial commercial that could actually work here. So I would just be interested in understanding, if not, to the earlier point, why not? Sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jordan. This item is certified, and we'll look forward to following up with you down the line here. Thank you. Okay, let's move to item 4.
The fourth item on our agenda is a certification of zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 2. Presenting for the first time to the Commission is Griffin Mills.
All right, Griffin, welcome aboard. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Great. Good afternoon, Chair Grodnick and Commissioners. This is a certification presentation for 236 Gold Street. This is a private application from 236 Gold LLC requesting a zoning map amendment from an R6B to a C6-2A district and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing MIH area with options 1 and 2. These actions would facilitate a 14-story mixed-use building with over 79,500 square feet of total floor area, with 114 dwelling units, 29 of which would be income restricted under MIH Option 1, and 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial. This project is located at 236 Gold Street between Concourse Street and Tillery Street in the Bridge Plaza neighborhood just north of downtown Brooklyn in Brooklyn Community District 2. This project site is extremely well connected with public transportation. Within a half mile of project area, there are 5 subway stations with 10 train lines, the B, F, Q, R, A, C2, 3, 4, and 5 trains. By subway, the financial district is about 20 minutes away, and Midtown Manhattan is about 30 minutes away. The B57, B67, B69, and B62 bus lines also have bus stops within a 4-minute walk of the project area. These buses connect the project area to Brooklyn neighborhoods such as Gowanus and Kensington, and Queens neighborhoods such as Maspeth and Long Island City. This is an aerial view looking north towards the project area, which is highlighted in orange. The project area is situated between the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway to the east, Tillery Street to the south, which is 150 feet wide, Flatbush Avenue, which is 128 feet wide to the west, which turns into the Manhattan Bridge just north of the project area. The project area fronts on Gold Street, which is 76 feet wide and consists of medium-density 12 and 13-story apartment buildings. Concourse Street to the north of the project area consists of primarily lower-density 3- and 4-story townhomes, as well as 1-story warehouses. South of the project area is the Brooklyn Commons, formerly Metrotech, with Borough Hall and downtown Brooklyn Civic Center to the west. Nearby open spaces include the 6-acre Trinity Park to the north, the Golconda Playground to the northeast, McLaughlin Park to the west, and the 10-acre Commodore Barry Park to the east. These are mostly small parks with a wide variety of sport courts used for recreation. Cadman Plaza Park and Brooklyn Bridge Park are a 10-minute walk west and north, respectively. The NYCHA Farragut Houses complex is located northeast of the project site, which consists of 10 buildings and are home to over 4,000 residents. Further northeast, the Brooklyn Navy Yards industrial campus occupies 300 acres along the Brooklyn waterfront and are home to over 400 businesses, primarily operating in the industrial and creative sectors. As illustrated here, the land uses in the area surrounding the project consist of low and mid-density residential and mixed residential and commercial buildings, numerous academic institutions, open spaces, and industrial uses. Some institutions, as marked in blue, include the Brooklyn International High School, just northwest of the project area on Concord Street, PS 87 and Madison Square Boys and Girls Club northeast of the project area, located on Nassau and Concord Streets. Industrial uses shown in purple include a custom window and door manufacturer, as well as three one-story building supply warehouses that reflect the M11 zoning that was mapped in this area prior to the 2003 Bridge Plaza rezoning. The project area is immediately surrounded by an existing C62 district to the south and the east, and an R6B district to the north and the west. There's an R6 district located both north and east of the project area, and a C43 district located both north and west. There's an R71 district mapped further west of the project area as well. The special downtown Brooklyn district sits south of the project area and was rezoned in 2004 as a part of the Downtown Brooklyn Development Plan to promote the growth of downtown Brooklyn as a regional center business district. The project area was rezoned from an M11 to an R6B zoning district in 2003 as a part of the Bridge Plaza rezoning, which allowed for residential and commercial development in scale with existing land uses, balanced with nearby C43 and C62 districts, which allowed for slightly higher densities to support development in underdeveloped lots. The rezoning prohibited new industrial and commercial uses on existing vacant lots within the Bridge Plaza neighborhood. This is a view looking directly at the project area from Gold Street. Lots 33, 35, 36, and 37 were previously used for parking, but currently remain vacant. You can see the lower density townhomes in the R6B district to the north, as well as the medium density residential apartment buildings directly south in the C62 district. This is a view looking south on Gold Street. The project area is on the right, highlighted in orange. You can see downtown Brooklyn in the background, as well as 13-story buildings located both immediately south and east of the development site, built to the existing C62 zoning. This is a view looking north on Gold Street. The project area is on the left side, highlighted in orange. You can see the mixed-use 13-story residential building across the street from the development site, which has a ground floor preschool. This is a view looking southwest on Concord Street, looking at Gold Street. The project area is highlighted in orange on the left side of the image. There are 3- and 4-story townhomes located along Concord Street in the R6B district, as well as the window and door manufacturer directly on the corner of Gold and Concord. This is a view from Tillery Street, looking north at Gold Street. Project area is highlighted in orange on the left side of Gold Street. This image shows the 13-story residential buildings located on both corners of Gold Street, built to the existing C62 zoning. The proposed development is a 14-story mixed-use building. The base of the building will be 105 feet and then will step back to a total height of 145 feet. The building will have 77,500 square feet of residential with 114 dwelling units, 29 which will be income restricted under MIH Option 1. The ground floor will contain 2,115 square feet of commercial uses. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone the project area from an R6B to a C62A district, as well as a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH with options 1 and 2. The zoning map amendment seeks to rezone the project area from an R6B to a C62A. This would extend the current C62 zoning on Gold Street for a more contextual mid-block. The proposed C62A district has a length of 125 feet, which is the entire length of tax lots 33, 35, 36, and 37 on Gold Street, which comprise the development site. The rezoning boundary is set to the center line of the block, which includes a 12-foot sliver of lots 14, 15, 16, 17, as 7501 on Duffield Street, which are not owned by the applicant or included in the proposed development. C62A zoning districts are contextual districts where quality housing bulk regulations are mandatory for residential buildings. The residential equivalent of a C62A district is R8A. The FAR is 7.2 with MIH. C62A districts produce high lot coverage 14-story apartment buildings set at or near the street line. The maximum base height is 105 feet, and then the building must set back before rising to a maximum height of 145 feet. No parking is required for residential developments in the inner transit zone. The proposed zoning text amendment to Appendix F would map an MIH area with options 1 and 2 for an area coterminous with the rezoning area. Option 1 requires 25% of the residential floor area to be income restricted for households on average making 60% of the area median income or lower. Option 2 requires 30% of the residential floor area to be income restricted for households on average making 80% AMI or lower. This application requires a racial equity report, which helps put the proposal into context with neighborhood-level socioeconomic data. The annual median household income for this project area is about $119,000, which is significantly greater than the median household income in both Brooklyn and New York City. The applicant intends to utilize MIH option 1, which would result in 12 units for families with income averaging 40% AMI and 17 units for families with incomes averaging 60% AMI. As per the racial equity report, the population of Brooklyn Heights and Fort Greene is 40% white non-Hispanic, 20% Black non-Hispanic, 14% Hispanic Latino, and 12% Asian non-Hispanic. The white non-Hispanic population is a significantly greater share of the area's population when compared to Brooklyn and New York City. From 2010 to 2020, the area saw a 29% increase in population, which is significantly greater than Brooklyn's 9% increase and New York City's 8% increase. There was significant growth in the Asian and white non-Hispanic populations, outpacing Brooklyn and citywide trends. There was a 12% decline in the Black non-Hispanic population and a slight increase in the Hispanic Latino population of any race. From 2010 to 2023, housing units in Brooklyn Heights and Fort Greene increased by 38% and the population increased by 29%. This significantly outpaces the growth in both Brooklyn and in New York City. To conclude, this is a private application for a zoning map amendment from an R6B to a C62A district and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to map MIH options 1 and 2. These actions would facilitate a new 14-story mixed-use building, including over 79,500 square feet of total floor area with 114 dwelling units, 29 of which would be income restricted under MIH option 1, and 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial in the Bridge Plaza neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 2. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Great job. Congratulations. Let me start with Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you. I don't actually have a question. I'm just here to embarrass Griffin. Just want to say good job. And Griffin was one of my graduate students at in the urban planning program at Wagner last year. Congratulations. Well done.
You'll be called back for the next round.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, you're off the hook. Thank you very much. Great job. Okay, let's move on to the next item. That item is certified. Number 5, 236 Gold Street. I'm sorry, that was number 4. Now we're on to number 5. Madam Secretary.
The fifth item on our agenda is a non-ULURP post-referral review of a certification in Queens Community District 12. Our presenter is Shristi Bharachara Shakia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gorodnick and Commissioners. Next slide, please. So this is a private application by Archer Towers Development, LLC, which is developing an as-of-right mixed-use building in downtown Jamaica within the special downtown Jamaica district. They are seeking for a curb cut certification by the New York City Planning Commission chairperson pursuant to 115-42 of zoning resolution of the City of New York to allow a 20-foot wide curb cut on Archer Avenue, serving car parking garage with 6 or 7 parking spaces in connection with a new 22-story residential and community facility building at 163-25 Archer Avenue of Borough of Queens, Community District 12. Next slide, please. So the project area is located at a proximity to a transit-rich destination with numerous transit resources. Jamaica Transit Hub is located within approximately 0.7 miles west of the project area, servicing E, J, and Z subway lines, air train connecting to JFK Airport, and also the LIRR line. Jamaica Center Station is located 4 blocks west of the project area that also services E, J, and Z subway lines. The Sutton Boulevard and Parsons Boulevard stations, which service the F train, is located approximately 0.7 miles north of the project area along Hillside Avenue. There is an MTA bus depot located 4 blocks southeast of the project area, fronting Merrick Boulevard, and Rufus King Park is located within half a mile of the project area. Next slide, please. The surrounding land use is mostly mixed commercial and residential, and commercial depicted by pink and red shade on the map. The project area depicted by red dashed line on the map was rezoned from a C42 zoning district to a C61A district in 1973. Then the project area was rezoned to C63 during 2007 Jamaica rezoning and has remained a C63 zoning district since. Next slide, please. The project area is located 4 blocks east of Parsons Boulevard, EJ and Z terminus, with frontage on Archer Avenue between Gaia Brewer Boulevard and 165th Street. The 164th Street to the east of the lot is a paper street, not in use as a public street. The 164th Street is partially owned by the New York City Department of Transportation and partially privately owned, and is part of Lot 116 to the east, which is a portion that fronts on Archer Avenue. As you can see in the aerial map view here, the development site is the vacant lot adjacent to the east of the 25-story mixed-use residential and commercial building that was built as of right in 2021. That is around 600 residential units. Next slide, please. The Special Downtown Jamaica District was established as part of the city-sponsored Jamaica rezoning in 2007 with the goal to harness and strengthen downtown Jamaica's business core, expand the retail, entertainment, and commercial character of the area near major transit hub, and improve quality of development in appropriate locations. Special Downtown Jamaica District text limits bulk and use controls with variety of regulations, of which is the location of curb cuts, which are restricted, as you can see on this map, along primary streets, Jamaica Avenue and Archer Avenue running east and west, and Sutton Boulevard running south, north and south. The idea is that these would be primary retail frontages, and DCP wanted to encourage an uninterrupted street wall and ground floor presence to reduce conflicts and encourage an active streetscape. The project area is located to the north side of Archer Avenue between Gaia Brewer Boulevard to the west and 165th Street to the east. According to the CR section 115-42, the curb cuts are prohibited along Archer Avenue and require CPC chair certification to allow curb cuts no greater than 20 feet if such zoning lot has access only to such prohibited location. Next slide, please. Just to give a quick tour of the site, the photo on the screen is showing the view of the development site facing northwest from Archer Avenue. In the photo, the orange solid line indicates the proposed curb cut, and the blue solid line indicates the existing curb cut that is going to be removed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. So this photo is showing the view of the sidewalk along north side of Archer Avenue facing west. The development side is to the right side of the screen, depicted by a yellow solid line. And to the left of the side of the screen, we can see the Alaya track that runs east to west along Archer Avenue. Next slide, please. This photo is showing the view of the sidewalk along the north side of Archer Avenue, facing east. The development side is to the left side of the screen, depicted by a yellow solid line. And to the right side of the screen is we can see the Alaya track that runs east to west along Archer Avenue. Next slide, please. The development team is proposing a 22-story mixed-use development with 259,400 square feet of residential floor area and 2,000 square feet of community facility on the ground floor level. They are proposing 400 100% income restricted units, of which 80 units are for households earning it at or below 80% AMI. The remaining income restricted units are for households earning above 80% AMI. They are proposing 67 parking spaces, of which 31 will be in the cellar level and 37 parking spaces will be in the ground floor level open parking area. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan of the development site. As you can see, the applicant is proposing a 20-foot wide curb cut to facilitate a permitted accessory off-street parking in the development. The driveway leading from the curb cut will be open and unenclosed to the sky, leading to the parking area under the proposed development and the cellar level garage. As you can see on the map, the development site is an interior lot with access only through one street frontage. The 164th Street to the west is only a paper street, which is not in use and is being utilized as a scrap storage area. To the west of the site is 25-story mixed-use development that was built in 2021. The Archer Avenue Lot 9 is located within a portion of Archer Avenue where curb cuts are prohibited without a CPC certification. Next slide, please. And here is a section in ZR that specifies the curb cut certification. Next slide, please. So the application was referred out to Committee Vote 12 on December 3rd of 2024. The applicant presented the proposal before CB12 Land Use Committee on January 7th of 2025. However, they were tabled and did not get scheduled to be in the agenda for Committee Vote 12 full board meeting on January 15th, 2025, and no vote was taken. There is no recommendation or vote submitted at this time by the Community Board. They have recommended the applicant to come back before the Land Use Committee and full board with their full project presentation. Next slide, please. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. So the applicant's seeking a 20-foot curb cut. There's an existing curb cut there today, correct?
That's correct.
How wide is that existing curb cut?
The existing curb cut is around 42 feet. That's,
okay.
Yeah.
And there's no other access to the site from any other street, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Thank you for your presentation. This doesn't go to the issue before us. I'm just curious. It's 400 units, income restricted, 80 of which are up to 80% AMI. What are the other 320? What's the AMI level among the other 320 units?
That's above 80% AMI.
That's above 80%.
Yes, 80 units are going to be for households that are earning at or below 80% AMI, and the remaining income restricted units are for households earning above 80% AMI.
And you said the 320 are above 80% AMI? I guess it says income restricted, so I was wondering what that meant in this context.
So as per what the applicant have provided, the information that they have provided, there are 400 units total.
Yeah.
And 80 units would be, would be for households that are earning 80% AMI or below 80% AMI, and the remaining rest would be above 80% AMI. I don't know if that answered your question.
So up to and between 80% and the maximum for eligibility is what, Srishti?
Yeah.
I don't, I can reach out to the applicant team to get more clarity on this.
Because it says 100% income restricted. I just want to know what that meant.
There is a maximum for eligibility.
It's 160, but she...
Okay, hold on. There is a maximum for eligibility pursuant to the city's own rules. We'll follow up and get that precise number for you, whether maybe Commissioner Mudding is about to answer.
I'm not going to quote the amount. All I'm going to request is that you please give us a breakdown of the units by AMI and what they are, please.
We can do that. I will note that for the purpose of today, the question is about a curb cut. So I would like to proceed, if everybody's okay, on the question of eligibility here.
Curiosity.
Go ahead, Commissioner Mann.
Just a quick question. Are those required parking spaces in the surface parking lot that necessitates the curb cut?
Yes, this application was referred out prior to the CHO regulations being approved. But yeah.
So today, are they required? Meaning post adoption of the City of Yes?
Post adoption, they may not be required, but this was referred out. Yeah.
So has there been any consideration of removing the parking and not doing the curb cut?
We were not able to kind of take that into consideration at the point when we were working through this application.
Okay, I guess I would just wonder whether that's worth considering here, given that, development of surface parking in downtown Jamaica doesn't seem to be where the Jamaica neighborhood plan would take us. And I would hope that we would try to find ways of squeezing as much affordable housing out of these sites as possible, especially with surface parking lots.
I can get back to you with a clear answer to you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
All right, we will follow up with the applicant on whether there's an interest in exploring other routes that would allow for them to not have to do the parking. We will follow up on the questions of the precise AMIs for the 320 units that are above 80%. And with that, I'm going to seek assent by voice vote to send an approval letter to the Buildings Department. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. Ayes have it. Thank you, Srishti.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
Okay, we're ready.
The sixth item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a notice of intent to acquire office space in Manhattan Community District 1. Our presenter is Matthew Gutierrez.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Matthew.
Hi. So today I'll be describing an application for an office space acquisition at 1 Battery Park Plaza. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS, and the Independent Budget Office, or IBO, have applied for an office space acquisition pursuant to Section 195 of the New York City Charter. As quick background, IBO has since 1989 provided local elected officials and the public with information and analysis regarding the budget, fiscal implications of proposed policies, as well as projected revenues. IBO's proposed office space would be at 1 Battery Park Plaza, which is located in the financial district within Manhattan Community District 1. The map on the right indicates where 1 Battery Park Plaza is in relation to its current office at 110 William Street. 1 Battery Park Plaza encompasses an entire block and is bounded by Bridge Street to the north, Whitehall Street to the east, Pearl Street to the south, and State Street to the west. The Battery is located on the opposite side of State Street. The site and surrounding area are within a C55 zoning district and the special Lower Manhattan district, which permit a wide range of high-density commercial, residential, and mixed uses with ground floor retail. While the blocks surrounding 1 Battery Park Plaza are predominantly commercial, the surrounding area also contains mixed commercial and residential buildings, as well as fully residential buildings. 1 Battery Park Plaza has excellent access to public transportation. It is close to the 1, 4, 5, R, W, J, and Z subway lines, as well as numerous Manhattan and interborough bus lines. The site is also a short walk from the New York City Ferry and the Staten Island Ferry stops. In addition, there are several bike lanes in the neighborhood, including separated lanes alongside New York State Route 9A, as well as below the elevated FDR Drive. IBO has been headquartered at 110 William Street, a privately owned building, since 1996. It currently occupies approximately 8,500 square feet on the 14th floor. Since the mid-1990s, IBO staff has doubled in size and has now approximately 51 full-time employees. As a result, IBO believes it has outgrown its current space. IBO hopes to move into an approximately 18,800 square foot office on 1 Battery Park Plaza's 4th floor. It would be situated within a 35-story, nearly 900,000 square foot building that has entrances on Whitehall Street and State Street. The office space is large enough to accommodate IBO's full-time staff, interns, and research fellows, as well as its charter-mandated advisory committee meetings. The space would be renovated to provide ADA-compliant private offices, office cubicles, conference rooms, storage areas, a wellness room, pantry area, and restrooms. The downtown location of 1 Battery Park Plaza would also ensure that IBO would continue benefiting from proximity to other government offices, such as the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. And here are some pictures of the office that IBO hopes to occupy. And in addition to being larger, compared to IBO's current office, this space offers more natural light, improved ventilation, and opportunity for necessary technological upgrades. And here is an illustrative layout of their space. Private offices line the bottom and left-hand side of the image, while communal spaces like the pantry, conference room, and the cubicles are in the interior of this plan. IBO presented to Community Board 1's Land Use Committee on January 13th. And while CB1 has not yet passed a resolution, it can do so and submit comments before the CPC vote on February 19th. In summary, IBO seeks to lease approximately 18,800 square feet of office space at 1 Battery Park Plaza, pursuant to Section 195 of the New York City Charter. The proposed office space will be large enough to accommodate IBO's approximately 51 full-time staff members, as well as interns and fellows, and to accommodate its charter-mandated meetings. Renovations would take place, providing ADA-compliant and technologically upgraded facilities. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, we'll pick this one up on Wednesday. We have a question from Commissioner Crowell.
Hi, yes. What was DCAS's role in the selection of this site?
So it is my understanding that IBO spearheaded the search, and once they found a site that they were keen on, that they brought it to DCAS to follow up with next steps. But on Wednesday, they can provide more information on that.
So DCAS wasn't involved in the search.
In the search. It was,
IBO independently was, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Knuckles.
What was the prior allocation that they had of space at 110 William Street? What do they have now?
Yeah, let me pull it up for you. They had 8,500 square feet, approximately, just over 8,500 square feet at 110 William.
So now they need twice as much space?
Yeah, in their application, they described how since they moved into that space in 1996, their staff has doubled in size. So they want a space that is, significantly larger.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Vice Chairman. Okay, all right. Well, we'll hear more about this one on Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7.
The seventh item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a notice to intent to acquire office space in Staten Island Community District 1. Our presenter is Vincent Mackey.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Vincent Mackey. I'm the Borough Certification Manager in Staten Island office. I'm here today to present 209 Bay Street, an application to acquire office space for New York City Department of Social Services, Human Resources Administration. This application is a notice of intent to acquire office space per Section 195 of the City Charter. It is a public application being sought by the Department of Citywide Administrative Services and the Department of Social Services, Human Resources Administration to lease approximately 2,000 square feet of office space at 209 Bay Street for the HRA's use. This site is located in the Tompkinsville neighborhood of Staten Island within City District 1. Here's a timeline of HRA's recent office space history. In 2006, HRA contracted provider Church Avenue Merchant Block Association, or CAMBA, home base, begins operating at 209 Bay Street in Staten Island, providing critical homeless prevention services under HRA's contract. This location serves as a key site for assisting individuals at risk of homelessness. Today, HRA and DCAS seek to acquire approximately 2,000 square feet of office space at 209 Bay Street, with the lease renewal for CAMBA home base pending. A 195 application is filed to formalize HRA's continued use of the location, ensuring ongoing service provision for the Staten Island community. HRA intends to continue using the office space at 209 Bay Street for the next 5 years while exploring nearby options for a more modernized facility to better serve its clients and meet operational needs. Here's an aerial view of the subject site, which is a one-story office building located at 209 Bay Street. The main entrance to the site is located in the southwest side of Bay Street between Victory Boulevard and Minthorne Street. Lot 7 is located in the Tompkinsville neighborhood within an R6 C2-4 zoning district. Tompkinsville is a transportation-rich area, making it unique compared to most of Staten Island. The proposed site offers excellent access to public transportation, a core concern for the agency program that services at-risk individuals. The site is just 1 block from the Tompkinsville station of the Staten Island Railroad. It's about 500 feet from the S78 bus route and 0.1 miles from several other bus routes at the Montgomery Avenue, Victory Boulevard, and Bay Street stops. The proposed site is just 0.6 miles from the St. George Ferry Terminal. The project site is Lot 7, is located in the Tompkinsville neighborhood within an R6 C2-4 zoning district. HRA's office space is located on the ground floor of the one-story building. The proposed site primarily consists of workstations along with operational and common spaces, including 12 desks, workstations, an orientation room, lobby, waiting area, pantry, and restrooms. There are approximately 12 employees that utilize the office space on a daily basis, who contribute to the area's local economy and utilize its mass transportation. CAMBA's homelessness prevention services located on Lot 7 are in proximity to HRA's 2 other locations on the same block, 201, 207 Bay Street, as seen on the left, and 215 Bay Street, as seen on the right. HRA programs at 201 Bay Street include Benefits Access Center Richmond, Richmond SNAP Center, Fair Affairs, Public Engagement Unit, Home Energy Assistance Program, and Investigation, Revenue, and Enforcement Administration. God bless you. In addition, HRA's HIV and AIDS Services Administration operates at 207 Bay Street. HRA's Staten Island Medicaid Office, Adult Protective Services, and Domestic Violence Services operate at 215 Bay Street. Together, 201, 207, 209, and 215 Bay Streets form a hub of HRA services for all of Staten Island. The proximity of these HRA entities allow for both operational and client service efficiencies by the agency. The site office is the photo on the left, and applicant waiting area is the photo on the right. The public accesses the space by scheduling appointment via telephone or email or walk-ins during normal hours, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. On occasion, the office will remain open until 6:45 p.m. on a weeknight. There are no fleet vehicles that operate out of this location, and there are no parking allocated to staff due to its transit-rich location. The applicant states that they meet the four fair share criteria related to the suitability of cost effectiveness, operational efficiency, consistency of location, and supporting the development of New York City's regional business districts. This concludes my presentation. The applicant team is scheduled to present at the public hearing on February 5th. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you very much. So we're going to have a hearing on this one on Wednesday. Commissioner Cerullo has a question.
Just a quick question, and perhaps the applicant team could come prepared. Do we know what the lease is, what the lease status is for each of the other locations along this corridor?
I don't have that information, but we can.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there because it would be interesting to know what the cycle is for all of the different offices along this stretch, which of course is quite familiar. The other question I would just pose, and I realize it's, although I'm going to pose it anyway, are there any plans for the city to do anything to create a different pedestrian experience and for the clients and for the community outside this stretch? I mean, it's all continuous, even though there are different addresses. But there's so much work going on in this area to improve the public realm. There are things happening at Victory, across the street, just really everywhere in the vicinity here. And I just, again, it's just a question to throw out just to prepare the applicant team to see if they had any thoughts about what they possibly, and the pictures are quite representative that of what is there. It's clean, it's stark, and I just wondering if there's any thought about how do we create a different, even minor improvement to the public realm along that Bay Street corridor area, the sidewalk particularly.
Sure. I'd be happy to have the applicant team take a look into any projects that are along the area.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you very much. We will pick this one up on Wednesday. Okay, let's move to number 8. We are on to Queen's item.
The 8th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 6. Our presenter is Andrew Wasserman.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Please let me know.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Excellent. Great, thanks. I'm presenting 10251 Queens Boulevard rezoning. This application was certified on October 15th and is now back for pre-hearing. Next slide, please. This is a private application by QBM Properties, LLC in the Forest Hills neighborhood of Queens, Community District 6. to facilitate the development of a new 17-story plus cellar mixed-use residential and commercial building with a total of approximately 184,000 square feet, consisting of about 166,000 residential square feet, with 216 total dwelling units, including 54 income-restricted units and approximately 18,000 commercial square feet. The proposed development includes 87 total parking spaces, all of which would be provided for residential use, split between parking areas in the cellar and on the second floor. Next slide, please. The applicant seeks a zoning map amendment to change an existing R71/C12 zoning district to an R8X/C24 and R71 zoning districts. The applicant also seeks a zoning text amendment to map MIH options 1 and 2. Next slide, please. The application was certified by the City Planning Commission on October 15th. On November 21st, Queens Community Board 6 held a public hearing on this proposal, and on December 11th, the board voted in favor of this application with conditions by a vote of 23 approvals, 6 oppositions, and 0 abstentions. The board's conditions include recommendations to reduce the amount of parking in order to provide more affordable housing units, modify the rear facade of the building to provide more visual appeal and to increase the setback distances along the rear property line, and provide a carve-out for 15% supportive housing units and an on-site supportive services program within the building. Next slide, please. On December 19th, the Queensborough President held a hearing on this application and on January 8th submitted a recommendation of approval with conditions. His conditions included a minimum 30% goal to include MWBE firms along with other local hiring efforts, and a recommendation that there should be quarterly reporting of these hiring initiatives to the borough president and council member. The applicant should also adhere to Community Board 6's condition regarding the rear facade to the best of their ability. This concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Andrew. All right. We will pick this one up on Wednesday. Thank you. Let's move on to the next.
The 9th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Brooklyn Community District 1. Our presenter is Lucia Capuccio.
Okay, Lucia. Now we're talking about some more public hearing items. Let's go.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. I'll just wait for the presentation. Okay. So this is a pre-hearing follow-up for a private application from 2510 CIA LLC for a zoning map amendment from R4 and C81 districts to an R7D C24 district within the Special Ocean Parkway District, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F to facilitate the development of a new 11-story mixed-use development, including over 61,000 square feet of residential space, or 60 dwelling units, 16 of which will be permanently income restricted, and over 6,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. This application was certified on November 4th, 2024, and the public hearing is scheduled for this Wednesday, February 5th. The proposed actions include a zoning map amendment to change the existing R4 and C81 districts along Coney Island Avenue to an R7D C24 district, and a zoning text amendment to map MIH coterminous with the project area. On December 17th, 2024, Community Board 15 held a public hearing, and with a vote of 3 in favor, 33 opposed, and 1 abstention, voted to disapprove this application. During the Community Board review period, the applicant modified the illustrative materials and reduced the height and unit count of the proposed building. The board, however, still had concerns that the proposed rezoning would negatively impact traffic and congestion on Coney Island Avenue. The applicant has not filed a modified land use application with the department. On January 15th, the Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing for this application and subsequently recommended to approve the application with 1 condition, that the applicant reduces the parking spaces to a maximum of 1 parking space per 2 dwelling units. In summary, this is a private application for a zoning map amendment from an R4 and C81 district within the Special Ocean Parkway District to an R7D C24 district, and a zoning text amendment to map MIH and to facilitate the development of a new 11-story mixed-use building, including approximately 60 units, including 16 of which would be permanently income restricted. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you very much. We will have a public hearing on this item on Wednesday, and we have a question for you now from Commissioner Osorio.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. We'll save the questions for the applicant for later, but I just wanted to ask you one quick thing. From the department's point of view, you know, what is your position in terms of the amount of parking that is being proposed? Specifically, in the comments that the borough president submitted, there's some numbers in terms of the additional cost quoting the department, and I'm wondering if you can help us understand sort of like how do we get to those numbers. They sound significant and important in terms of maximizing the amount of affordable housing units that we can produce here. So help us understand a little bit, you know, what those numbers come from and so forth.
Yeah, I think the department would like to hear the public during the public hearing on Wednesday before we comment on the application.
But no, just generally, I mean, you don't have to give me what's your final position, but what's been sort of like more or less the discussion on your end in terms of, you know, that point? It sounds to be like a central point in the conversation. Yes, thank you. And anything that you would feel comfortable would be okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. I just want to sort of like think about it as I prepare for the hearing.
Yeah, thanks for the question. David Weisglass, Department Staff, Brooklyn office. The numbers that the borough president quoted in his recommendation, to my memory and understanding, were numbers that were mostly taken from a lot of the research that we did for the City for Housing Opportunity numbers. So that was a lot of research that went into overall numbers that may not be specific to this neighborhood or that building, or, you know, obviously every building, every development is, you know, has a life of its own. But generally, if my memory serves me correctly, a lot of the numbers spoke to the amount of cost it is to the developer to provide one parking spot and where that could be allocated elsewhere. And so my understanding is that's a lot of the numbers that was quoted. The department, you know, stands by the research that it's done there. As for, you know, this specific development, I mean, as Lucius said, we do want to wait to hear a little bit more from the community and, you know, at the public hearing. But just on those numbers, we do stand behind those, and that was a lot of the research done for the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity.
Thank you. That's extremely useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, we will see this one on Wednesday then.
Great.
Thank you, Lucia. Great. Let's move on.
The 10th item on our agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning map and zoning text amendments, UDAP designation, acquisitions, and disposition of city-owned properties in Brooklyn Community Districts 3 and 8. Our presenters are Jonah Rogoff and Jesse Hirakawa.
All right, Jonah, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. All right, so we're really pleased to return for today's pre-hearing following the Community Board and Borough President review of AMUP, which was certified on October 15th. Today we're going to quickly just recap the plan's goals, give a brief refresher on the proposal, and update you all on the Community Board and Borough President recommendations. So first, this plan and its related actions, known as AMUP, represents a major opportunity to re-envision a corridor in central Brooklyn to support housing and job growth, coupled with streetscape and infrastructure improvements, the culmination of over a decade of planning work and engagement. As proposed, AMUP would create about 4,600 new homes, of which 1,440 would be income restricted, and over 800,000 square feet of space for businesses, totaling about 2,800 new jobs. To facilitate this vision, we're proposing a set of zoning map amendments and zoning text amendments to map MIH and establish a special district to improve the public realm and foster a mix of uses. In addition, HPD and DCAS are co-applicants for several site-specific actions, including UDAP designations, acquisition and disposition actions to facilitate additional housing at 5 sites. AMUP covers about 21 blocks along Atlantic Avenue, split between Crown Heights and Prospect Heights in Community District 8 to the south, and Bedford-Stuyvesant in Community District 3 to the north. And now I'll just pass it over to Jesse to recap our proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonah.
And building on Community Board 8's MCOM process and the aim of Community Vision Report, the plan introduces a new framework, opportunities for capital and programmatic investments, and an expanded project area to create more affordable housing opportunities beyond MIH. And so once again, to help achieve these goals, we're proposing zoning map changes, a special district to go beyond what the underlying zoning can achieve on its own, site-specific opportunities to unlock potential for public sites, and other opportunities in coordination with agency partners. So specifically, the land use actions include a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, and an urban development action area known as UDAP, acquisitions and dispositions of the city-owned land. And first, we have a zoning map change, which is transitioning the underlying M11 zoning into 5 distinct density areas. And so these areas are as follows: the Atlantic Avenue corridor you see in red, north-south avenues in a darker orange, and the mid-block areas, mixed-use sub-areas in the lighter yellow, or lighter orange, which comprises of the primary area. And then we have a residential area, which is in yellow on the outsides, and the armory in purple in the middle, which is a sub-area which are related to specific sites. In summary of these areas, first I'm starting with Atlantic Avenue. This 120-foot wide auto-centric corridor has resulted in hundreds of traffic injuries over the past decade. It's narrow, its uneven sidewalks lack shade, lack seating, and lack connectivity. And like other AMUP areas, this is a transit-rich and also has seen strong interest in some private rezonings of the area. We aim to promote high-density housing with active ground floor uses that enhance the streetscape. And so the proposal is to extend C63A along the corridor between Vanderbilt and Nostrand and rezone 1 block from Classen Avenue to Franklin Avenue as an M14A, R9A to support existing manufacturing with mix of uses. Additionally, proposals include breaking up building facades for along street walls, requiring active ground floor uses, and also setting back street walls to improve the pedestrian experience. Moving on to the next area, we have Grand, Classen, Franklin, and Bedford Avenues, which are all important connectors across Atlantic Avenue. Along these corridors, we seek to encourage mixed-use developments with active ground floor uses and with a height that steps down from Atlantic Avenue. The R7D/M13A is proposed along Grand and Classen Avenues. You see the orange in the middle. And then the C45D along Bedford Avenue, which was actually extended of the existing C45D mapped as part of the Bed-Stuy South rezoning back in 2007. In addition, mapping an C24 overlay in existing residential areas with non-conforming commercial in the dotted red you see on the bottom there. Onto the third area, which is our mid-block areas, which are comprised mainly of areas south of Atlantic Avenue between Grand, Classen, and Franklin, as well as the section of Herkimer Place to the north. Here we're proposing a mix of uses and densities reflecting of the side street context, while incentivizing mixed-use developments that support job growth. And so to accomplish this, we're proposing to map a pairing of R6A and M12A districts in the mid-block south of Atlantic Avenue and the C43A along Bedford Place. To incentivize 1 to 2 floors for spaces for jobs, we propose an incentive of 1.1 FAR for all types of non-residential uses, and which would be unlocked for only mixed-use buildings. Moving on to the top right, where the orange sliver is of Herkimer Place, we're proposing to map M11A paired with R6B. Once again, to incentivize spaces for jobs, we propose to allow an increase of 0.6 FAR for a total of 3 FAR, and this is once again only for mixed-use developments. The Bedford Atlantic Armory is a city-owned LPC landmark, currently partly used by the Department of Homeless Services as a men's shelter. Here we're proposing to map an M13A with the short-term goal to bring the armory into compliance, and with a long-term goal of exploring ways to reactivate this as an underutilized space. Moving on to the residential areas, AMUP seeks to maximize affordable housing opportunities on city or non-profitly owned sites. There is one to the south of the armory and 2 non-contiguous areas to the right and left. As a first step to facilitating these opportunities, we're proposing to rezone these areas to R7D, R7-2, and R7A. I will note that the two yellow areas on the left and right that are non-contiguous are not part of the special Atlantic Avenue mixed-use district, the special district. And so those proposed R7D and R7-2 zoning developments will be per as of right that were now currently since CHO has been adopted. This adds, for the Commission's awareness, this adds an extra 10 feet under R7D and a potential increase of 20 feet for R7-2, which is the location of the 457 Nostrand infill that will be subject to LPC review and a forthcoming RFP, which Jonah will talk a little bit more about later. Moving on to special text amendments, the Special Atlantic Avenue Mixed-Use Special District would include rules to ensure rules for a lively streetscape along Atlantic Avenue and other corridors and support a mix of uses, while MIH would also be mapped in all areas allowing residential. In addition, with the recent adoption of City of Yes for housing opportunity, this text amendment will also clean up some of the zoning text for AMA. As mentioned before, we're proposing a zoning incentive for mid-block job-generating uses with housing above. This text amendment also includes urban design measures to set back buildings to effectively create a wider sidewalk, mandate facade articulation on larger buildings, and also the first public space bonus expansion outside of Manhattan and central business districts. Now focusing on more site-based proposals and investments that were announced at certification, and also to provide some updates, I'm going to hand the mic back to Jonah.
All right. So now we'll just spend a few slides just recapping the additional income-restricted housing units that we're proposing in AMUP. As a couple of quick updates, so during public review, we collaborated as a city with the Empire State Development Corporation, ESD, and local elected officials, particularly Crystal Hudson and the state electeds, to advance a project on a state-owned site at 1024 Fulton Street, shown in the map above. ESD has started public outreach to redevelop that site for affordable housing, which is intended to occur through a general project plan or GBP process. So although separate from the CPC's actions, we're really pleased to unlock the site as part of a larger effort in the area. I'll also just note a quick update. We have a slide later on 1134 Pacific, but that one, HPD will be here on Wednesday to testify, but they were able to reach an agreement to have that be part of the ELA program to reach lower income populations. So just two quick updates. So moving on to the proposal, as a reminder, at 542 Dean Street, we're seeking to develop 151 affordable homes for older New Yorkers earning up to 50% AMI, as well as provide on-site social services, a separate community facility space, and 6,500 square feet of new publicly accessible open space. And then at 516 Bergen Street, we're seeking to facilitate the development of an 11-story mixed-use building with 111 affordable homes for families, with a majority of units up to 60% AMI and the remainder up to 80% AMI, based on the ELA term sheet. This proposal also includes a 5,000 square foot multi-purpose community center and 23 replacement parking vehicles in the cellar for HPD to continue storing their inspection vehicles. A UDAP action is proposed to facilitate both projects, this one and the Dean Street project. And then for the Bergen Street project, we're proposing an acquisition action in order to allow HPD to keep a portion of their vehicles in the cellar. And then at 1134 Pacific Street, HPD is working with the developer and nonprofit Acacia Network to develop an 11-story mixed-use building with 119 affordable homes, which, as I just mentioned, will be part of the ELA program. And then to facilitate this proposal, we're including an acquisition and disposition action to allow HPD to reacquire the site and remove a deed restriction from a previously approved UDAP from 1987. And this will be followed by a transfer or sale to a cost-share network to build the affordable housing. At 1110 Atlantic Avenue, there is an approximately 26,000 square foot site owned by the city and leased by the New York City Transit Authority, used as a cable repair shop and storage. We're proposing an acquisition and disposition action here for the site in order to facilitate a future redevelopment. And discussions over the use of the site are still ongoing with City Hall and the MTA. At 47 Nostrand Avenue, we're continuing to evaluate infill here of up to 200 homes on a property owned by DOE that's used as an adult learning center and includes a large surface parking lot as shown above, where we're considering infill with affordable housing and possibly a school space on the ground floor. And then to facilitate this, we're proposing a disposition of city-owned property. Okay, so as mentioned, at certification, AIM-UP includes a few city-led programs and investments, while long-term investments in the public realm and infrastructure are still being considered. We wanted to highlight a few existing and ongoing investments, some of which are a direct response to outreach, and what we believe reflects a down payment on our commitment for a holistic plan. These projects include area-wide tenant workshops and other ongoing initiatives or outreach we've done, but also specific investments in streets, parks, and infrastructure. So on top of the previously announced $24.2 million at St. Andrew's Playground, the city is advancing immediate safety improvements for Atlantic Avenue through a partnership with DOT. Apologies, I actually meant to describe this on this slide. And so here is just a view of an example of some of the projects, which we call street improvement projects, or SIPs, which will include neck downs, crosswalks, and marking refreshings and daylighting. What we typically refer to as paint and plastic in lieu of like a larger corridor-wide redesign. As part of the environmental review process, the DEIS identified impacts in the categories highlighted above in yellow. Some mitigation measures were discussed as part of the DEIS and will be explored further in the FEIS. So now moving to an update on ULURP. Community Boards 3 and 8 both submitted favorable recommendations with conditions. Although no land use actions are proposed in Community District 2, the department presented to Community Board 2 as a courtesy given the coterminous boundary and also to hear their feedback on non-zoning opportunities. So starting with Community Board 3, covering the portion north of Atlantic Avenue, the board held a public hearing and vote on December 2nd, voting 22 in favor, 6 against, and none abstaining to approve AIM-UP with conditions. These included conditions related to Atlantic Avenue, the 457 Nostrand Avenue DOE infill site, parks and open space, jobs and infrastructure, as shown on the slide above. Next, for Community Board 8, covering the portion south of Atlantic, they held a public hearing and vote on December 12th, voting unanimously with 26 in favor, none against or abstaining to approve AIM-UP with conditions, including the conditions shown above, below to promote specific types of non-residential uses, increase the amount and depth of affordable housing, funding for legal services for tenants, and supporting tenants who have been previously displaced by giving them priority for new affordable housing. On the topic of economic development, the board recommended to set aside funding for a variety of programs to create and preserve jobs for local residents and businesses shown on the slide above. Lastly, Community Board 8 included recommendations to improve sidewalks, streetscape, public transit, sustainability, and open space, along with a broader general condition to fund a facilitation consultant to oversee the city's investments. On January 15th, Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso held a public hearing and on January 27th submitted a recommendation for approval with the following conditions. First, on the topic of manufacturing, he requested that AMUP require ground floor manufacturing uses in the eastern mid-block area while incentivizing manufacturing uses in the western mid-block area, establish an industrial business service provider, and prevent manufacturing displacement. On housing, he recommended to take every effort to increase the production of affordable housing here, especially deeply affordable units, investigate a tenant displacement registry or housing preference program, and then also, separate from AMUP, but related, introduce tenant relocation assistance legislation. On transit and streetscape, there were conditions that subway improvements be made and that DOT commit to a road diet along Atlantic Avenue from 4 to 6 lanes, from 6 to 4 lanes, and then adjust parking rules to support businesses and improve enforcement, and finally, prioritize investments in Lowry Triangle. That concludes the presentation, and happy to take any questions. I'll just quickly note that HPD and DOT, possibly SBS, will be at Wednesday's hearing to testify.
Great. Thanks, Jonah, and thanks to you and the team for all of your efforts to date. We really appreciate it, and it has come a long way over a very, very long period of time. So congratulations.
Thank you.
To you and Jesse and to the entire Brooklyn office. Let me see if there are questions now before we have our hearing on Wednesday. Commissioner Osorio.
Well, the question is will we have time to ask the department questions on Wednesday, or do you prefer that we start now, or how do you prefer to work?
No, the department you can ask the department questions on Wednesday, but I think you might as well ask them now if you have actual questions, because they're here and we won't take the time from the public on Wednesday. So
okay,
now's a good time.
I have some questions for HPD and the other agencies. I'll ask them then, but I just wanted to get your general response to, in terms of just process, it's clearly, and first of all, thanks so much for the presentation, the reports. Everything is very thorough, very clear. This is a very important comprehensive effort. I think I would say it's necessary, but there's also so many different aspects to it. And so, I just commend the department in terms of thinking comprehensively about this and serving as a facilitator with the other agencies on this. The tour was extremely useful, and thanks so much for the briefings. Last week, we had a really good opportunity to continue the conversation with HPD, and so thanks again for all of that. Just the first quick question in terms of process. So clearly there's a series of conditions that are being, associated with the support that you've been receiving from the borough president and from the community boards. Help me understand a little bit, sort of like, how is that going to play out? How will you be responding to these conditions? In addition, specifically, the borough president, I think, includes a series of excellent questions. And so, instead of me asking you question by question, I'm wondering if it's possible to, or tell me a little bit how you're planning to address them.
Sure. So I'll just start off by saying, internally, as soon as we received the recommendations from both the community board and the borough president, we circulated that to the full interagency team, particularly to DOT, SBS, HPD, because they've been such close partners with us. Mm-hmm. So in coordination with them and City Hall, we want to make sure that we're on the same page. And then I would just note, too, that separately, the council members have been very diligent in advocating for some of those. And so we're still looking at all of them and seeing how we can incorporate them. But I would also just want to give them some credit as well.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, cool. I look forward to that. If you could at least explicitly on the questions that the borough president has raised, which I think are central, it would be great to get something in writing from you guys, just so that we can, continue the conversation that way. But specifically, I wanted to ask you two quick questions which have to do with the general research. One is, I wholeheartedly agree with the recommendation from the borough president to require manufacturing uses, and so where appropriate. And I wonder, what's been sort of like the preliminary finding in that regard? What's your general response? I know that in addition to that, there's a recommendation to create a meaningful bonus to attract manufacturing in the mid-blocks, which is a slightly different question. But tell me a little bit about, why do you feel that an MX like this one is actually going to help us retain manufacturing? Is there, for example, are there any preliminary findings from your larger citywide industrial retention research, pursuant of the plan that you can share with us? Anything that you can help us understand sort of like where you're coming from, and that would be useful. Otherwise, that's a big concern that I have and would love to understand how you're thinking about it.
Absolutely. So maybe what I'll do is I'll speak more for AIM-UP, and then if you want to, others can kind of jump in more broadly across the borough. I'll say that we think that our proposed zoning does a lot to achieve a goal around balancing both housing and job growth, in a sense that, just to give you, before talking about manufacturing, I'll just say that we, overall, we think that we're making a strong effort to promote as many jobs as possible through AIM-UP by either requiring non-residential space on all the corridors, including the north-south corridors, and then in the mid-block, where the underlying zoning doesn't go far enough, we're really excited to have an innovative tool to promote at least 1 to 2 floors of space. And so where we've seen a similar type of incentive, which we're looking at now, and Gowanus is part of Gowanus Mix, which I know goes a step further by specifying specific uses. We have seen strong interest in that incentive, and almost all developments that have come online in Gowanus have used that incentive. So we think an incentive as a tool, it can be very powerful, but at the same time, we want to be cautious in a sense that AIM-UP is not an IBZ, it's surrounded by residential. When we did our outreach, we heard really loud and clear that there's an interest in not just industrial, but other types of uses, whether it's retail, office, community facility. We also want to be a little cautious in ensuring that there's flexibility for those uses over time, or if there's demand for different types of jobs, that the local market can evolve. We want to be careful about promoting specific types of uses that could cause conflicts with residents, and we want the area to grow organically. The other thing I would say is that I think a key step for either promoting or even requiring manufacturing is there's a key question of it is does that work in mixed-use buildings? And so we, in our special district, we included a provision for if you have a mixed-use building with residential and industrial, you can currently, well, let me take a step back. Currently today, if you were to mix those uses, the zoning, well, it does allow it, but there are other code regulations through DEP that restrict the mixing of residential and industrial. And so we've learned some lessons from a project in Brownsville called 803 Rockaway, which we're hoping to apply here, and we're currently talking with DEP to consider updating the provision we have in our special district to better allow the mixing of those uses. So all to say that before even considering mixing residential industrial, we want to make sure that there aren't any issues with compliance or physical or financial issues with mixing. The last thing I would say, and sorry for the long answer, but I think it's a really important question. When it comes to promoting industrial, we want to take instead of like a broad brush approach, I think we're really interested in thinking about what's successful at specific sites based on what owners are interested in. So We've been working closely with GMDC, a local partner there. We're really interested in the Bedford Atlantic Armory, a city facility that could possibly occupy more space for jobs, like a workforce center, and so that's an ongoing discussion. We're also interested in non-zoning ways of helping businesses through IDA or other incentives. So we feel that zoning isn't necessarily the best tool to really help a lot of these businesses, particularly in AIM Up. But nonetheless, we understand that the mixing of those uses is an important goal for the council member, and so we think this will be an ongoing discussion. I don't know.
I can respond really quickly. I mean, I know that you're this is a little bit of a work in progress, and I understand that. And I don't mean for you to have answers to all of the questions now, but it sounds from what you said that you still have some questions that are still under exploration. For example, whether or not the MX is working in the first place. Unless you know what those numbers are and could share those with me, it's hard for me to understand why are we relying on the incentive so much and not using zoning more to the point here to require manufacturing industrial where it makes sense. And maybe in other places, actually think about the other tools in combination to your point. There's some other questions that the borough president raises here, for example, in terms of providing additional services to the businesses, which sounds kind of like along the lines of what you were saying. And I'm excited to hear you say that, assuming that there's some type of synergy or you think that something along those lines is possible. But just going back to the question, maybe thinking about how can AIM Up be prototyped in terms of the industrial retention plan, and think about how can we use this to explore, but a more explicit toolkit to retain industrial, I think would be important. Otherwise, I'm afraid I don't see the full strength of what we could be doing here in terms of industrial retention, which I don't think it's exclusive with what you're talking about in terms of creating flexibility and increasing potential mixes in places where these things could coexist. The other question, which is more procedural, is in terms of the amount of public resources that actually could be committed to industrial retention and to providing to growing the industry. Can you help me understand also at what point is the department with the citywide industrial retention plan, just to understand how these two decisions relate to? Is there something else that we could know in terms of where you are in that regard, just to understand what's actually possible? I know that the city is making an important commitment in terms of anti-displacement for residents, but I don't see that level of investment with businesses, with industrial businesses, and at a point where, quite honestly, we could be growing, not preserving, just preserving, the minimum amount of businesses. But this is an opportunity to explore, what other industries and how can we grow the existing, industries that would be, appropriate here.
Completely understand. I'll just speak really quickly. I know Officer will jump in. I'll just say for AIM Up, I want to just clarify too that based on our analysis, I think there are only about 26 actual manufacturing jobs that are within AIM, and firms, and that's heavily concentrated at GMDC and a few other. So I think for AIM Up, we want to take a more targeted approach. The vast majority of industrial uses in AIM Up are not kind of active manufacturing. They're more distribution, wholesale, building suppliers. So I think we're also looking at ways of looking at job training or apprenticeship or other service and programs that kind of target, or green technology that look at growing industries. So I think, and I'll just say we're definitely coordinating with our central divisions on the industrial plan. So we're reviewing this as kind of one piece of a larger whole, but in AIM Up, trying to be very targeted about what we're doing.
That makes sense, and I appreciate that, and you know, I want to be careful in sort of like our interpretation of the numbers of the existing number of companies and jobs, because the reason why they're so low is because there's been little planning to grow them. And, you know, the amount of speculation that has happened in this part of the city and displacement is a major factor in sort of like hindering the potential that we could be literally attracting here. And so particularly at a moment where a just transition, the type of, you know, climate mitigation goals that the city has committed to, et cetera, will require services and goods that are simply needed, urgently needed, and we have to import. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we have to I think respectfully that we have to be careful in terms of how do we interpret how little or what is too little, and rather create a historic context and plan for growing that. And this seems to be like an important opportunity to do that. I'll stop there, but I would love to hear from you guys in terms of anything in addition to what you've already shared with us that can help us understand how much do you think in terms of industrial retention is really possible, and then an explicit response to the questions that have been put forth, which I think are excellent and very clear.
Sure. And so I want to talk to your question about citywide commitments as they relate. You might recall as part of economic opportunity, there was a commitment as part of the points of agreement to work with IDA to update some of those incentives as it relates to tax incentives, and that's a citywide initiative, and we're working on that. Jonah mentioned updates to MX text. We are going to pilot something new here as it relates to mixing those uses. We've been working very closely with GMDC, who as Jonah mentioned, worked on 803 Rockaway. We've had to work through some of the unique implications, not just mixing industrial uses with residential, but manufacturing. So things like woodworking, metal fabrication, and so on, very difficult to mix with residential, especially when you're including affordable housing. And so that's something that we're trying to work with DP on. Yeah.
You mean vertically, right?
Vertically.
But
yes,
horizontally?
Yeah, so right, the way it works is based on the zoning lot, but the intention is to make sure it can work vertically, but also horizontally, and working with DEP and DOB, and using GMDC as an expert to guide that conversation. And so, like I said, it's not just broadly industrial, but specifically manufacturing, and we think GMDC is a good thought partner on that. Jonah mentioned briefly the SBS work that we're undertaking. And that has been a significant component of our conversations. We've undertaken business roundtables. Predominantly, it has been retail, community facility, and some light industrial, not really manufacturing aside from GMDC. But SBS has been working with us and the council members on thinking through whether there's existing programs that work in the toolkit or new ones that should be applied, not just here in AMUP, but citywide. And importantly, something we've been talking about is the role that the Armory can play. And as you know, we have examples of city or public facilities or nonprofit facilities that really can target the affordable industrial spaces in a way that on the private sector, we can't really target that. As you know, the price differential is extreme. And also in a way where we are not trying to force two uses together that may not go well, like residential and real industrial. And so we may have more flexibility in a non-residential site, such as the Armory, to do something like that. So that's, yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is the Armory has been more explored for workforce development, or? Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, we don't have a set proposal, and there's no programming yet defined. But that could be a location for something where we're focusing on non-residential space, be that industrial, could be an opportunity.
That sounds great. But since that's not part of the proposal per se, I mean, you're in a way rezoning or creating the foundation for something like that, and I appreciate that. And I would love to hear sort of like to what extent do you think that could actually be a strong commitment from the other agencies that have to be involved for that. But and I don't mean to take more time on this, but if you can share additional information, particularly any data on the MX, the amount of jobs that have resulted from it, what are the constraints that you're seeing? Where are those specific kind of like constraints where you definitely have concluded that the vertical integration is not going to be possible here. I would love to understand that. I would love to see sort of like the extent of the research, and particularly I'm excited about this question, given the fact that the department, the city is working on a City 1 industrial plan. This to me sounds like at least at the heart of Brooklyn in that conversation, and would love to contribute to that.
Absolutely.
If we, I think, do not get the industrial retention part here, I'm afraid that we're hindering sort of like the ultimate goal of this plan.
Yeah. No, heard, and we can come back with numbers in areas that have gone either from M to R or MX. What's kind of the precedent? I will note, and Jonah alluded to earlier, we just started pulling the numbers for Gowanus as it relates to building permits and use groups that have been developed per the Gowanus mix. Not the exact same because it wasn't mandatory, number one. And number two, it didn't focus purely on manufacturing. It was a wider variety of like arts, light industrial community facility. But we will have some numbers there that we can also showcase. Very different market and different site typology, but it's another kind of litmus test. But we'll come back for sure.
Thanks again to all of you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Benjamin.
Hi, I also want to thank you for the tour and for the information you've been providing for all of us. Like my fellow commissioner, I am concerned about the manufacturing. And my first question is, this area has been known for auto-related uses. And it doesn't sound to me like you're considering that as part of manufacturing. Am I right or wrong?
I would say they're part of the uses that are there today that are kind of quasi-industrial, but not technically.
So you're not really, one of my concerns is the whole, both Grand Street corridor and a number of uses along Atlantic Avenue, including the Meineke and the ZAP, that are auto-related, that employ a lot of people, and particularly people for whom blue-collar jobs are scarce. So if we're not talking about, on Grand Street in particular, south of Atlantic, one of my concerns is those entities that do a lot of kind of body work and other kind of what one would normally consider industrial work, they're one-story buildings, maybe 2 stories. So in my mind, those will be some of the first places that are converted and that are demolished. So do we have a plan for where we think these auto-related jobs would go? This was an issue, not for you, but when we did Willard's Point, that whole area was filled with people who worked in auto-related, and those firms weren't going to be able to relocate. So what's our plan for an area that is known for being auto-related?
I would say, well, first, whether they're industrial or not, they're jobs that are there today. We've heard from many stakeholders that there's a need to support those businesses if they need to relocate. And so, working with SBS, we're still trying to put together a strategy, learning some lessons from Gowanus and Jerome, where there have been commitments for relocation. I think we're trying to see the best form of support. Some of those businesses do own their properties, others don't, and so they may be more at risk. I would say,
well, but at $54 a square foot versus $27 a square foot, the owner, even if the owner is an operator, might well opt in favor of their economic interests short term as opposed to the economic interests of their employees.
Understood. Yeah, I would say generally it's the issue around business displacement and particularly for the auto-related businesses has been an important topic, and so we're trying to see the best form of support that we can provide and working with SBS on that. But I would say in the short term, we don't want to do anything in zoning to necessarily hinder their ability to stay, and so that's partly the reason why we feel strongly about maintaining kind of like an MX or
right. But by changing it from a strict M to a mixed use, aren't we incentivizing their leaving? So
If I could jump in, I'll also note that obviously there's a price point where residential is more valuable than non-residential in a lot of cases. I would say that there's also the current trend of what's allowed today, which we see as conversion of these uses as of right to nightlife, entertainment, retail, self-storage. In a lot of instances, we've seen a lot of these spaces are basically open storage or parking. Recognizing that there are obviously businesses along Atlantic Avenue, there is an underlying and the north-south corridors, but there's a trend today of kind of a commercialization of those uses. And I think what we're trying to identify is that the trend that we want to see continue. And, I would say that the surrounding neighborhood and the goals of affordable housing production are important as well.
Well, they are, but the people, as I said, I take as an example Willets Point, where IDA and others tried to work, but the bottom line was that of 100 auto-related businesses, only 2 remained in the city. 2. We tried to do classes and to offer classes to the employees, to give them a different skill set, but because many of the employees were undocumented persons, they were afraid to take advantage. And in our atmosphere now, clearly, people will not step out to do that. And so my concern is how we plan to handle that in a way that will keep people employed, because without jobs, we don't need the housing. If people can't live, don't have the money to pay rent at all because they don't have jobs, then the affordable housing that we're providing is at their expense.
No, I completely agree, and I think you're getting at a point here where there's kind of a lot of under the table work that is not going to be picked up in the environmental documents necessarily. It is below minimum wage in a lot of instances, and so again, when looking at like Gowanus or Jerome, when we've looked at like relocation programs, I think there has been difficulty in reaching some of those like off the books kind of employment. But noting that again, those are like a relatively small amount of jobs in this area. This is not like a Willets Point type area. It's 2 to 4 blocks deep, 21 blocks. It's surrounded by row houses. It is not like a core industrial area where we would identify like relocation of lots of heavy industrial uses or even a strong kind of industrial presence in this area.
I mean, we may not agree on that point about how strong the auto-related uses are in this area. I think that you are correct east of Nostrand, but west of Nostrand, whether it's the gas stations or the Meineke or the Zap or the car wash, until you get to maybe Clinton, you do have a strong characteristic of auto-related uses, and that's what this strip was. I also have some concerns about reducing the number of moving lanes on Atlantic Avenue from 6 to 4. Atlantic Avenue is one of the, like Flushing Avenue, is one of the main transportation connections for trucks because they can't go on the Belt Parkway. They can't. So Atlantic Avenue is one of the main thoroughfares, and it's not clear to me how reducing the number of lanes is going to accommodate that traffic.
No, and it's that debate about the appropriate number of travel lanes and space for pedestrians and cyclists has been part of a decades-long discussion in these communities. And we definitely do not have a proposal as part of the AIM-UP to
make any engineering changes to Atlantic Avenue at this point in time. The recommendations have been mixed. The borough president recommended a reduction from 6 to 4. The community boards, if you notice, there was kind of a back and forth on actually how to get there. If any engineering changes need to occur, there would have to be a separate DOT study to do exactly that kind of analysis. So I want to make sure that it's clear, like, we are not recommending at this point in time any engineering changes. We have the SIPs, which are temporary in nature, and they're really about like interim improvements based on the immediate need. But I totally hear you, and that's been a very, very important back and forth that we've been having at the community level.
And Leslie, it seems to me, and we talked about this, that, and you expressed it, that the mixed-use district, the history of mixed-use districts from the original one in Soho, it seems to me that they've kind of been interim uses or interim zoning as kind of the market determines whether it's going to be residential or industrial, and most of the time it's residential. And the more residential it becomes, the less the residents want the manufacturing or industrial there. And as a result, the less the manufacturing and industrial tenants want to locate there or stay there, because they keep seeing that the buildings put more restrictions on their ability to operate. So in constructing this MXR district, again, how do we safeguard? I know when we were going down, I think it was Pacific Street, maybe it was Dean, and we were looking at the first floors that would be manufacturing with residential above. How are we going to make the manufacturing really possible in an atmosphere where the residential does not want to be constrained or bothered? I mean, I think of the meatpacking district, where even in cases where we made the owners and landlords put in restrictive declarations that they were on top of a meatpacking firm and there was going to be noise and vibrations and trucks, it didn't matter. Once people moved in, they wanted a residential, and they believed that having that was what we promised them, that they would be living in a residential area, but there might be some manufacturing, but it wouldn't disturb them. How are we making that happen in this district?
Maybe I'll start. I'll say that that's been a really key question for us internally as well. And so the latest, and we've also done this in coordination with central divisions, who have been an incredibly important partner. So working with DEP, we've learned that some of there are certain really key issues, like ensuring, I'll put aside financial issues, just physical issues with co-locating industrial and residential. So you allude to this, like noise and vibration. One key issue is if you have a spray booth. So making sure that like air quality and contaminants are well contained, and that you have proper ventilation, and that not just includes protecting the residents in that building, but also looking at adjacent buildings or even across the street. So that's a key part of it. Another one is vapor barriers. And so we're learning some of these physical challenges as part of our ongoing work with DEP, lessons from the 803 Rockaway project, which was also included a fully affordable housing development by GMDC in the Bridge. So that's been a really key first step for us, is just understanding how do we overcome these physical issues, both at the start of a project when it's being formulated, but also issues with enforcement and oversight over timing.
Well, but the things that we heard most often when I was both at the council and at DEP, frankly, doing seeker, were not the issues. The residents didn't talk about the spray booth, or, you're right, they did talk about noise. They talked about parking, and they talked about cars and trucks, whether the trucks were delivering items, picking up items. That was a big issue. Another big issue was the employees sitting outside, eating their lunch, making noise, and that strangers were coming in and out of what they saw as their residential building, even though it was in a separate entryway. They, by and large, that was one of the big complaints, was they didn't know who these people were. It made them feel unsafe, and so they tried very hard to regulate the employees in a way that the employees felt harassed and victimized by the residents. The hours at which manufacturing starts work was a big, major issue, that manufacturing started at 6 in the morning, and the people who faced that side were just bonkers. And those are the kinds of issues that I think, more often than the DEP issues, that lead to the conflicts in the MX, that I think we all need to address if we want to believe that the MX/R can really work.
Alex, before you respond, I just want to note, we're going to have to move on in a second. I just want to make sure that we give you a chance and
I'm down there.
Yeah, okay, all right, terrific. Go ahead, Alex.
No, I really appreciate it, because in working in MX districts across Brooklyn, right, like the 311 complaints, the stroller getting blocked by a freight truck, we know it's an issue. I'll just say that's getting to the larger, I think, point about the use flexibility that we're trying to build into the MX districts here, which we've done lessons learned from other MX areas where, for example, we do a 2 FAR non-residential district, an M zone, with a 3 or 4 FAR residential district. You're not really incentivizing or creating the space. There's high parking requirements on the M zone. So I just want to note the importance of the new tool here is not a kind of a standard off-the-shelf MX district. It really is incentivizing 1 to 2 stories of non-residential. And I say non-residential because I don't want to insinuate that it is only manufacturing. I think this gets to the larger discussion as to like a requirement, is that are we instituting conflicts later on down the road, and are we being honest with the public when we're saying it's going to be a variety of jobs and uses over the next 50 or 60 years. We're not really going to go back and change the zoning a lot after the fact. But these are important, and this is stuff we're grappling with, and I just want to give a shout out to our study, Can Industrial Mixed-Use Buildings Work? It's on our website. It looked at the difficulties and the kind of possibilities of mixing some of these uses, and it brings this up.
Okay, and you and I can talk off book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mann.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, congratulations on getting a positive recommendation out of the Borough President Committee Board on a significant rezoning. I just wanted to drill down. I'll save my HPD and DOT questions for the public hearing. I had a question about sidewalk cafes. I know we're taking a different direction here a little bit, but I'm just curious, as we do these neighborhood rezonings, how are we thinking about the coordination of where cafes are allowed or not allowed, especially as we're trying to encourage ground floor uses? And I was just curious if there's a kind of little bit of coordination that happens with DOT around if anything needs to happen around sidewalk cafe rules, both in street and on sidewalk, to update them?
Good question. We may need to get back, unless, Jesse, do you?
I could start, but also, I think to the exact point of sidewalk cafes, we could definitely get back to you on some more questions, but maybe I'll point out a little bit to what AMUP is doing in terms of that area, right? And so I think there's 2 things to kind of note. One, for any kind of new developments that are happening, at least along Atlantic Avenue, we're working on we're proposing that, right? Any new buildings is mandating to set back, right?
Jesse, I can cut you off. I don't want to, I know it's going late, and I don't want to belabor the point. Just, I think when you have a chance to clarify where cafes might be allowed.
Okay.
Either on the sidewalk, on the roadbed. I'm just curious how, as part of rezonings, we maybe rethink the streetscape with that in mind, given how successful restaurants are and given how essential this is for their operation.
Sounds good to you. Definitely get back to you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Okay, well, I think we'll probably leave it there, and we'll pick this up on Wednesday, but thank you. Important and really interesting conversation as it relates to MX and precedent and the interaction between residences and manufacturing businesses. We obviously have studies coming. We have, follow-ups related to what has happened in the past. The only observation I would make here is that this commission will recall that one of the reasons why we were having this engagement with the public on Atlantic Avenue was the sort of pressures that we were seeing, where we were having one-off residential developments coming on this corridor. They were happening, and there was a desire in the community, among the council members, certainly among the department, to think about ways that we could do that in a more wholesome fashion, allow for housing, allow preservation of businesses, allow for the entire assortment of potential uses on Atlantic Avenue and on the side streets. So that is one of the animating factors that actually brings us to this conversation today. So with that, we're going to have a great hearing on Wednesday. We look forward to seeing that. You all will introduce the subject. We're going to hear also from HPD, and then we're going to move on to the public. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to the next item for the day.
The 11th item on our agenda is a City Council modification scope determination for 2185 Coyle Street. The City Council proposes to modify the zoning text amendment to Appendix F, removing MIH Option 2 and adding the deep affordability option, and to modify the zoning map amendment, and staff believe this modification is within scope. Lucia Capuccio is here to present.
All right, thank you. Hello again.
Hello.
All right, good afternoon. This is a City Council modification for 2185 Coyle Street, a private application from 2185 Coyle Associates LLC for a zoning map amendment from an R4 C12 district to R6A C24, R7A C24, and R7X C24 districts, and a zoning text amendment to Appendix F in Sheepshead Bay, Community District 15, Brooklyn. The modification changes the zoning districts of the area to be rezoned and adds a deep affordability option to the MIH map. Here you can see the CPC approved zoning map amendment, which changed the existing R4 C12 district, covering the project area to R6A C24, R7A C24, and R7X C24. Here you can see the City Council modified districts, which have modified the R7X C24 district to an R7D C24 district, and the R7A C24 district to an R6A C24 district. This is a table with some of the regulations of the modified zoning districts. The modified districts will result in reductions in allowed height and FAR. This is the CPC approved MIH map, which maps option 1 and 2. And this is the City Council modified MIH map, which maps option 1 and the deeper affordability option. Both City Council modifications to the zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment are within scope of the environmental review. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry, can you just go back to the first recommendation?
Sure.
Okay, so this is taking out a piece of the puzzle from what had previously been approved by the commission, is that right?
So the project area stays the same. It's just a reduction. The CPC approved, I'll just go back. It's kind of hard to see here, but the CPC approved, it was split between R6A and R7A on the top of the lot, and then the 100 feet facing Avenue V was R7X. So the R7X portion is going down to R7D, and the R6A portion is now taking over the entire lot instead of having the R6A split with the R7A.
Okay, and what is the impact on the number of units as a result of that change?
Yeah, so the applicant told us that it would be a reduction of 55 units, including a reduction of 13 income-restricted MIH units. The new total would be 380 units, including 95 income-restricted units and 160 required parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Department believes this is in-scope change, is that correct?
Yes, it's in scope.
Okay. All right, well, it's on us to make the official determination, so I will seek assent here by a voice vote to send a letter to the council that these modifications are in fact within scope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we'll do it. Thank you, Lucia.
All right, thank you.
That motion passes. Okay, let's go to the next and last item for the day.
The 12th item on our agenda is the City Council modification scope determination for 438 Concord Avenue rezoning. The City Council proposes to modify the zoning text amendment to Appendix F, removing MIH Option 2 and adding the deep affordability option, and staff believe this modification is within scope.
Any presentation on this one?
No, but Caesar is available to answer questions.
Any questions on this? Okay. Again, I will seek assent here by a voice vote to send a letter to the council that these modifications are within scope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you very much. The ayes have it. I will send that letter.
Okay. Future votes. For consideration on Wednesday, February 5th, staff have prepared reports for East Harlem 125th Street bid. Jose is here to present.
Hi again, Commissioners. How are you?
Good.
The department presents the recommendation for the approval of the district plan of the Harlem bid. We did provide a response from SBS to the commission. I don't know if you guys have additional questions, but in summary, our recommendation is for the approval of the proposed bid, considering that this will also add an additional 12,000 linear feet of business improvement district to the to the general 125th Street corridor.
Great. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you, as always.
Thank you. Also, staff has prepared reports on 1093-1095 Jerome Avenue, UDAP, 1460-1480 Sheridan Boulevard Waterfront, and New York Community Hospital of Brooklyn. Next, on 9525 Queens Boulevard, Tao is on Zoom to present.
Hello. So the Department of City Planning staff finds the applicant's proposal to acquire office space to be appropriate. The Queens Noise Traffic Enforcement Unit has outgrown its existing office space, and the proposed space at 95-25 Queens Boulevard meets its operational needs. Its transit access and central location assists the work of the division without impacting the character of the local neighborhood. And a CPC report reflecting this recommendation has been prepared for the commission.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Secretary, just noting that is on the agenda for a vote on Wednesday, is that correct? Okay, because I didn't see it on the agenda here for the future votes list. I will just note that, if that is of relevance. But okay, 9525 Queens Boulevard, we have the department's recommendation of yes. Thank you very much.
Great. Next is 9777 Queens Boulevard. Andrew is on Zoom to present.
Same situation on this one. Yep.
Sure.
Yep, same situation as the last one, just down the street. The Department of City Planning finds the applicant's proposal to acquire office space appropriate. NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau's investigative groups 51, 53, and 56 have been operating out of overcrowded office spaces that are shared with other investigative groups in Manhattan and Brooklyn. The proposed space at 9777 Queens Boulevard meets their operational needs. Its transit access and central location assist with the work of the Bureau without impacting the character of the local neighborhood, and a CPC report reflecting this recommendation has been prepared for the Commission.
Great. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Thanks.
Lastly, for consideration on Wednesday, February 5th, is 720 West End Avenue parking authorization. Give us 1 second. Okay. post-hearing follow-ups. For post-hearing follow-ups, there were public comments and testimony provided on Queen's future. Stephen Johnson is here for any questions.
Any questions on this one? Okay. All right, we'll hold for now. Thank you, Stephen. Madam Secretary, anything left today?
No, Chair, we do not have anything left for today.
Okay, with appreciation to all of you for your time and attention today, we will pick this one up on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. See you Wednesday.